Chapter 1948. A complete makeover meant that 80% of the items would be new after the job was done. Even if they appeared familiar, they would not be the same thing they once knew. Furthermore, the void front lines were changing rapidly. Basically, once the specific plans were finalized, for example, Maple had just tossed out a sphere to indicate that it was a new generation of weapons, he would arrange it where it would be arranged or arrange everything. As long as it was not overly complicated, the void front lines would be filled with spheres the next day, extending from the node city to the realm of order. It was as if the world had changed drastically when they woke up, and everyone was still frozen where they were, unable to keep up with the pace of change. After waking up, they were abandoned by the world, unable to keep up with evolution. Well, that was how it was described. In fact, there were no Order warriors who could not keep up. The void front lines had undergone countless changes of various sizes, and they had plenty of ways to keep everyone up. If they could not keep up, they could just drag them along. It did not matter if they had a head or a person attached to their waistband. It was just that one person could not carry too many people, or the waistband would be a little heavy and too long. Then, after some thought, he felt that Maple's waistband would be ridiculously long. Of course, with Maple's personality, he would be more than happy to stuff everyone into a world radiance, and then hang it in his soul and drag them along. He would have the presence of an army of 10,000 when he stepped out alone. It was a true army of 10,000. He was an army of one, and could even hang a void defensive line in his soul. That was digressing. It was purely because he had done too much recording that he felt a little dizzy after arranging things, and perhaps a little hypoglycemic. His brain was not working too well. That's true, but didn't you just throw everything to model worker Little Green? It's not that tiring to arrange things, is it? Suifeng rolled his eyes at a certain unreliable Huijun. It's tiring to arrange things too. If I leave everything to Little Green, it would be even more inefficient. Wouldn't I have to divide things up one by one? We had a lot of things in our discussion before, and it's not like you weren't there. Hui grinned as he looked at the crystal balls piled up on the ground and a dozen or so hills on the floating island. His face twitched. He subconsciously moved his feet and touched the crystal ball beside his feet. The hill in front of him fell down, and even the hills a few meters away fell down together. He gritted his teeth and couldn't help but kick the rest of the crystal ball hills to fall down as well. I just finished. Suifeng's face twitched, and he rubbed his hair with his palm. Whatever. It's done anyway, it doesn't matter. He sighed softly, and turned to throw the crystal spheres away from the edge of the floating island. They fell into the sea of energy 100 meters below, splashing a series of water. Well, there was no point in doing that since it was just destroying them. The information had been recorded anyway, and there was no point in keeping them. I just didn't expect it to take 4 to 5 days just to deal with these. Are you done with your part? Huijun lay flat on the ground, looking up at the Temple of Origin behind him and sighed. Well, I guess I've adjusted everything according to my usual and favorite defense plan, combined with the defense against chaos you gave me, and finally adjusted according to the source laws. It's not that hard to think, just follow the steps step by step. There are only 4 to 5 steps of trial and error, which means it would take a lot of time since all the conditions are complete. Moreover, if it's possible, I hope to try it later and adjust it again to see if there are any loopholes, or to test if the hardcore defense is lacking. But if it's the latter, I can only think of ways to strengthen it. But is it really going to work? Huiting sat up with a troubled expression. The defense against the chaos concept body. I still couldn't sleep at night after dealing with it. I sat up and thought about it for a long time, and the only thing I could see from the countless defense plans is that they are weak. Suifeng was also troubled at the mention of that. The effect is definitely not as good as ours, and even if we had that level of defense back then, we would still be tormented by the chaos domain and chaos corruption of the chaos concept body. So what we can do now? It can only be said to make up for the gap in our defense. As for how much, it's hard to say. But it's definitely better than rushing in without any preparation. What if we just hold on for 1 minute, 1 second, and Brother Maple would. Are you saying that Maple would smash the chaos domain? Huiting smiled bitterly and patted his head. Seeing Suifeng nod stiffly, Huiting smiled even more bitterly. I don't think it's possible. I'm not saying that to discourage you, but, I think it's really difficult. It's just, difficult. Can the power of a pseudo-high-tier premier smash the chaos domain? If he's in the form of rule, order, and energy, and his power is at its limit. Suifeng stroked his chin, blue starlight flashing crazily in his eyes. Huiting was very excited to see how quickly he was thinking, and then he spread out his hand. It's not possible. That's the answer I expected. Being able to break the chaos domain of the chaos concept body means that there's a possibility of fighting the chaos concept body to a draw. Unless the chaos concept body in the underworld can't simply go out of the underworld, and its power hasn't recovered to its limit, like what the gods said. Otherwise, it's a little unreliable. Suifeng exhaled in distress. But there's no need to rush. Didn't Brother Maple say that he's far from prepared? He hasn't prepared everything, and we're the ones doing the work after the source law takes form. He must have a lot of things to adjust himself. When he recovers, he'll definitely use the source law to its limit and forcefully increase his combat power by a few levels. Maybe he'll be able to catch up to the chaos concept body. It's just that this matter can only be dealt with forcefully. If we can't break or resolve the chaos domain of the chaos concept body, we'll just be sending our men away for nothing. Speaking of the greatest force on the Void front lines, Brother Feng is the only one who could use it. Phew. I'll look through the relics left by the gods later. I'll also check out the 3 buildings and see if there's any additional effect that could increase our power, even if it's temporary. Hui was speechless. It felt like a fantasy no matter how he thought about it. The first legatees and those pinnacle primeval beings also said that they could catch up to the heavenly god of origins, but didn't they cause trouble when they attacked the chaos concept body with the power of a superior node and many intermediate nodes? Well, that's the truth. Let's not talk about such depressing things for now. We'll see what Maple can do in the remaining time. There's still a lot of unfinished business, and perhaps we can look forward to the combat power of the Void frontline after everyone's qualitative change. Maple himself had said that a strike that gathered all the power of the Void frontline, unleashed with the Staff of Creation, should be the limit of power that the Realm of Order could reach at the moment. Now, all we have to do is wait for all the changes to be completed before testing the limit. I understand the reason. Basically, he's tormenting himself without holding back, collapsing immediately after he's done and entering an emergency recovery state. After he recovers, he'll definitely torment himself as if his life depended on it, and then collapse again. Phew. That's also the big idiot's normal behavior. The core of the Sanctuary of Creation appeared to be a 10-meter square room, deliberately shrunk to the smallest possible size. There was a large bed in the room, and in the middle of the room were chairs, tables, and dressing tables that were rarely used. There was nothing else. The core used to create creations was next door, and it was deliberately divided into 2 parts since it was a specially made bed. Many energies flowed in this space, all of which were origin energies and rules. It was not just the big idiot's own, but also Suifeng's and the others. It seemed to be an attempt to speed up the big idiot's recovery, but there was no telling how effective it was. Yuan Kong, the little angel, and the others sat on the chairs and turned to look at the person lying quietly on the bed. Yuan Kong sighed inwardly. Lately, I've been seeing the big idiot lying down more and more. In the past, when there were frequent battles of extreme intensity, he was always hanging in the void as the morning star, and his light never dissipating. Now that he's in the logistics department, he's running to the bed every day. He's always being carried in, and every time he's carried in, it's equivalent to him collapsing once, depending on the situation. Although I've long heard from the big idiot that the reappearance of the rules of origin is very complicated and troublesome, and I've expected him to lie down for a while after it's done. I really didn't expect him to torture himself to this extent. Yuan Kong turned her head and looked at her sister, who had a calm expression. Sister, aren't you going to help him? The little angel sighed. There's no way to speed up the recovery of concept-level wounds. Well, the origin energy can speed it up a little, but that's all. Now, Shuang and I will each stabilize half of his soul. But you don't have to worry too much. His condition is much better now. The original worry that the second injury would slow down the recovery speed did not happen, and there are no more strange things happening. We just need to wait for time to pass. Yao Guang got up from the chair and went to the bedside to carefully check on Brother Feng's condition. It seems to be half-healed. It's been 10 days since the appearance of the rules of origin, and he's almost half-healed. Is the recovery speed faster than before? It's a little faster, but not as fast as you think. The second injury this time is mainly caused by himself. It's a concept-level wound that's entangled with the origin energy, so that part of the recovery is faster. The little angel softly explained. The wounds left behind by the chaos concept body had already mostly healed before he dealt with the source law, so it's not a big deal. Now, the most important thing is to heal the second wound, so it looks like it will be much faster. It's also because he sensed that he's almost recovered. Once he recovers, he might not be able to touch that part of the power again, so the big idiot took the risk without thinking. Yuan Kong breathed a sigh of relief and stretched out her arms and legs on the chair. What a helpless idiot. Idiot. Shuang pinched the 10-centimeter tall figure on the table like an ice sculpture and blinked her deep blue eyes. She saw Yao Guang with one knee on the bedside and bent over to poke Little Star's face. The two were very close to each other. Shuang was shocked and quickly said, Yao Guang, don't get too close to him. You'll... Before she could finish her sentence, Yao Guang let out a cry of surprise as he was dragged under the blanket. Little Angel and Yuan Kong turned around at the same time. Yuan Kong was slightly taken aback when she saw this scene. Big idiot, did you sleep too much? He can still pull people into the quilt when he's asleep. Shuang's pretty face showed a helpless expression. Little Star is in a coma. He's not in a good state. He can't sleep well and likes to look for things to hug. This helpless tone, this slightly helpless expression, and the expression that seemed to empathize with him, startled Yuan Kong. Could it be that the little angel glanced at Shuang, who was laughing dryly and teased? Before you came, Shuang had been acting as Little Star's quilt and doll for 5 days. Yuan Kong was dumbfounded. You really let him pester you for 5 days? Shuang shrunk her neck and laughed dryly. Little Star is weak. I dare not. Use force. Yuan Kong made a non-committal sound. There were many ways to break free from the hug even if one did not use force. It was not as difficult as one imagined. This was obviously just a way of saying, maybe Shuang did not intend to. She seemed to understand. She immediately looked at Shuang with a suspicious gaze. Her gaze lingered on Shuang's slightly blushing face for a while. Then she said, Oh, I see. You also want to call yourself a family member in the family area, right? Shuang immediately shrank her head behind the little angel's wings like an ostrich. This was too easy to guess. No, this thought did not need to guess at all. Yuan Kong and the little angel were speechless. They did not know when Shuang had this idea. At first, they really did not know. At first, they just thought that she was a little girl who was afraid of strangers. After all, she was kidnapped and unfamiliar with the place. How did she become like this without knowing it? Yao Guang raised his trembling hand. I'm not going to hang here for 5 days, right? Yuan Kong had just taken a sip of tea. When she heard that, she turned her head and spat out a torrent of water 5 meters away from her mouth. She was speechless. You teleported yourself out? Oh, of course. If you want to hang there for a few days, that's not a problem. It's your own wish. Yao Guang thought for a moment. Then, he put his hand down and pulled the quilt. Then I'll hang there for 2 days. Yuan Kong. There was still room for negotiation. Did this girl also want to change her identity? All right. Since the big idiot is fine, I'll go out first. There seems to be something. Yuan Kong sighed and stood up. She looked at her sister and Shuang and asked, Don't you want to do anything? At this time when the source law is covering. We're doing it. The little angel replied calmly. Everything is going as usual. We're not wasting any time. Staying by little star's side will be faster. Everything will be faster, whether it's breaking through the realm or grinding away the seal. Shuang nodded. Very, very soon. The seal is about to disappear. Just put in a little more effort. Yes. Yao Guang immediately adjusted to a comfortable sleeping position. He raised his hand. Then I'll hang here for a while. Anyway, the Void Patrol team can't be formed in the near future. Dao Tian went to inherit his legacy, right? Qingyu went to break through as well. I'll just stay here. Oh, comfortable. It's over. He's fallen. Yuan Kong sighed and shook her head. She sat down and continued to make tea while muttering. Shuang tilted her head and said to her, Aren't you going out? Oh, I'm not going. It's fine here. The little angel couldn't help but smile. He's fallen too. The atmosphere here is indeed better than other places. Aside from the influence of the source law and the big idiot's origin energy, there's also a subtle aura. Well, it's not easy to describe. It's very subtle. It's like I don't feel it very often. It's a little unfamiliar. Yuan Kong's gaze swept across the room. It's coming from Brother Feng. Yao Guang raised his hand and waved at them. That subtle feeling is very unfamiliar, but the aura it contains is very familiar. It's the aura of the source law. The little angel explained. After Little Star began to explore his own path, his consciousness would often inadvertently return to the source law. Every time he returns to the source law, the aura of the source law on his body would become stronger. The progress seems good, but as for the specifics, you'll have to ask him to find out. Yuan Kong tilted her head. Strange. But isn't the source law the same? Why are there 2 different auras? They don't seem to be the same. The names are similar, but they point to different goals. Shuang shook her head and helped to answer. The source law that Little Star is recreating now should correspond to, if the Great Yuan realm hadn't split into 8 parts, the environmental law would be like this. That's the case. As for the source law, although it also has the word source, the source law and the source void, that we commonly use refer to the place at the bottom of the void. The 2 are different. The source law corresponds to the environmental law at the beginning of the Great Yuan realm, the chaotic era. However, that era is too far away from us. Many things have happened in the Great Yuan realm, and it has been split into 8 parts. It has already undergone earth-shattering changes. The environmental law is also managed by each primordial realm, so it lacks a certain characteristic. Even the strength of the law itself has naturally declined. The environmental law of the 8 primordial realms is the environmental law, and the source law is the source law. Their characteristics are different. Shuang lowered her head and thought for a moment. After a moment, she felt that she had said something right. She nodded seriously. Yes, that's what Little Star said. One refers to the changed version of the environmental law at the beginning of the Great Yuan realm, and the other refers to the environment at the bottom. Yuan Kong pinched her cheeks in distress. There are too many things and too many names. I will remember them all one day. Little Angel glanced at her and whispered, I have already remembered them all. Yuan Kong laughed dryly. When the special situation in the room was mentioned, she suddenly thought of a problem. Speaking of which, the Guardian and Suifeng have been discussing a topic recently. They seem to be discussing who will be the first to reach the high level of Yuanshi in the Void frontline. After the source law came out, everyone relaxed a little. Well, no, they felt a little relieved. Yao Guang reached out and hugged Big Brother Feng tightly. Even though she knew that the four of them wouldn't disturb him even if they yelled and screamed, she still purposely whispered, "Even though everyone knows that we're still very, very far away from our goal, we still feel a little relieved. That's why we can discuss such harmless topics." I understand this atmosphere. It's not that everyone is relaxed. They just feel a little more relaxed because they have found a clearer way out and a clearer goal in a short period of time. That's why they feel a little relaxed. It should be because the psychological burden is less. Yuan Kong held the teacup with both hands and gently stroked it. Everyone, whether it is the warriors of order who have been guarding the realm of order or the Void Patrol team, have been busy for 5 eras. Only a few people are not confused at all. Just like Big Idiot, he used this one thought and goal, as well as those ideas and mentality that are different from ordinary people to cover up all the uneasiness, confusion, and a series of emotions that would hinder progress. But everyone is different. Compared to him, everyone is a normal person. Even if you suppress similar emotions, it does not mean that they do not exist. It was normal to feel lost. Against an opponent they knew they could never defeat and a goal they could never reach, they would still do their best and give up everything they had to fight. Still, there would still be anxiety. Who would be willing to face a goal they could never reach? They could only fight with all they had, and if there was no meaning in the end, then life and time here, such a heavy topic. It remained heavy no matter how many years had passed. After all, not everyone was like Little Star, who could walk without hesitation towards a predestined ending without fear. It was precisely because he felt indifferent towards all things that he could walk with such determination. Perhaps, whether it was fighting or staying in the divine realm, it did not make much of a difference to him. It was just that he wanted to fight more, and from the moment he set that goal, he had no intention of turning back. He tilted his head to look at Little Star's sleeping face. It was no longer the endless exhaustion and restlessness that he had shown during his countless unexpected deep slumber. This time, when he was sleeping soundly, it was as if he had returned to the time in the realm of the gods, when he was still lying on the clouds, calm and tranquil. Even Little Star himself had relaxed, after the source laws had appeared. It was just that he was not in a good state and was sleeping restlessly. Yao Guang was clearly being treated like a rag doll. Looking at the sighing little angel, and Yuan Kong, Shuang blinked her eyes. Who do you think will ascend to the top? Being brought back to the starting point all of a sudden, Yuan Kong was stunned for a moment. Snapping out of his thoughts, he thought for a moment. If it's not the Guardians, it's the heirs, and the warriors of the previous era who were also warriors of the Order. Now, they are the ones with the highest level in the Void frontline, followed by Sister Jing, Lady Green, Shuang, and Yu Shuang, as well as Green Phoenix and Xiu. It's more or less in that order to ascend to the primeval tier. Could there be any accidents? The path to the primeval tier was smooth and unobstructed. It was just a little bumpy like a muddy path after a rain. Now, with the origin rule covering it, the muddy path had become a true path to heaven. Aside from the prohibition seal, which was still blocking the path like a stinking rock, the biggest obstacle was the prohibition seal. Yuan Kong's mind raced for a while before he was suddenly enlightened. He slammed his palm on the table and bounced up, giving Yao Guang a fright. He hurriedly raised his head to look at the table. What's wrong? Is the sky falling and the earth sinking? I forgot something. Didn't I just say that I have something to do? I was talking about the Big Idiot and forgot about it. Yuan Kong scratched his head and laughed dryly. As he opened the portal, he said, Xiu and Green Phoenix are coming out today. We have to go and take a look. Little Angel and Shuang Shuang both responded with an "oh" before standing up calmly. The former said calmly, "Let's go take a look." The two of them have indeed slept for a long time. They must have broken through in one go and encountered another seal. They suddenly came into contact with the origin rule when they were not under the prohibition seal. Doesn't that mean they have one less chance to have the prohibition seal halved compared to the others? Shuang Shuang tilted her head and asked doubtfully. Wow. That sounds like a loss. Yuan Kong could not help but exclaim. Fortunately, we were all in the prohibition seal, so half of it was gone. Yao Guang looked at the three of them talking as they walked and stared at them. Hey! Don't leave me here alone. Seeing that the three of them did not intend to pay attention to him at all but deliberately left the portal in place, Yao Guang was anxious. He hurriedly looked around. After a moment, he calmed down and broke the entire space in one breath. Then, he carried Brother Feng and followed them. Wait for me. Little Angel and the other two. This girl is really going to follow us and break the core of the creation sanctum. She is really going all out just to join in the fun. Chapter 1949. How long had it been since then? How many days? Or how many years? His consciousness had been immersed in the source environment, unable to feel the passage of time, unable to feel the movements of the outside world. It was as if he was about to fall into an eternal slumber, as if he had been completely exiled here, in a state of complete return. Just like the source life, returning to its own essence, the components of life once again becoming nothingness, and the only thing left would be his consciousness. And his consciousness would also be slowly worn away over an endless period of time, until nothing was left in the end. After returning to the source environment for such a long time, he could not determine whether he had suddenly left the world, or whether this return was just a little special. He could not tell, he did not even know how long he had stayed here, but from what he felt, it was indeed a very long period of time. He had been merged with the source environment, and did not know if anything had happened to his consciousness, if his consciousness would be used as a bridge to affect his soul. This should not escape. Every time he returned to the source environment, there would be a little change, and in such a long period of time this time, there would definitely be changes, but he did not know how much had come. His consciousness had been trying to return to his soul for a few days, but there was no response. His soul had ignored him, or perhaps the source environment's restraints on him were too strong. Restraints? Was it restraints, or was it because the integration was too deep that it was affected? He could not figure it out. He heard a sound, but it was not the sound that had sounded twice in the source environment, and it should be the sound that came from the outside. His soul seemed to have heard something, and it seemed that the connection between his consciousness and his soul had been re-established. As this thought became clearer, he judged that he was in a state of rapid return. At the same time, there was a sudden movement in his consciousness, and there was a huge, unknown thing. His senses felt like a huge thing was rapidly retreating from the state that had spread throughout his body, quickly leaving his consciousness. This clear feeling made him feel as if he was bleeding, and he could feel himself becoming colder and colder. After a brief analysis, he realized that it was the movement of the source origin leaving his consciousness. Probably because he had been merged with the source origin for too long, he did not know whether it was him who first moved his mouth and took a bite, or the source origin saw an uninvited guest and tried to poke him and then swallowed him. Fortunately, the source origin was not a living thing, or his thoughts would have run even further away. In short, he used his strength to follow the direction where the sound came from, and then shouted 1-2 in his consciousness, and jumped out with this strength. The return of his consciousness was always accompanied by light, and he moved towards the light, as if this was a unified sign of awakening. However, when he really opened his eyes, and when the real thing was reflected in his eyes, the light would quietly retreat, and then, "Ah, little star, you're awake?" Siyu saw that he suddenly opened his eyes, and greeted him with surprise and joy. She smiled sweetly, but her hands did not stop moving at all. Yun Nuoxing was still in a daze after waking up, and he was still in a state of being manipulated by others. He was stunned for a long time until he saw a familiar piece of clothing fly out from Siyu's hand, and he suddenly came back to his senses. "What are you doing?" "Taking off your clothes," Siyu said calmly, revealing a suspicious and blushing expression. "I've done what I should do." Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes, reached out and rubbed her head twice. "How long have I been asleep?" "Not long. The concept of time is a problem, so give me a specific number." Siyu raised her head and thought for a while, and then said with a smile, "The lowest level in the void frontline is the mid-level yuanshi. Ah, little star, you don't count. Tell me the truth. How long have I been unconscious?" Yun Nuoxing suddenly became excited, and his violent movement startled Siyu. She quickly moved aside and sat down next to him. When she saw him scrambling to get up and pick up the clothes that were thrown all over the bed, she could not help but laugh. "Actually, it's only 20 years. The mid-level yuanshi is just scaring you." Yun Nuoxing's movement stiffened, and he was stunned when he heard the time. How did it become 20 years? Siyu moved down from the bed, calmly picked up Little Star's clothes, and put them on him one by one. She tilted her head and said softly, "We don't know. When we woke up, Little Star, you had been sleeping. During the time when we were not around, you caused a lot of trouble. I feel like I lost a world because I didn't participate in it. Anyway, when we woke up, we saw that your soul was still cracked, and then it became like this. You recovered and fell asleep. We don't know what happened to you, but you were in good condition, so we didn't wake you up." Yun Nuoxing was silent. It was probably because he had been swaying in the source environment for a long time unknowingly. Although his senses had really stayed there for a long time, at that time, he was in a wooden state. He just numbly watched time pass by. Watched time pass by bit without feeling anything in his heart. When he felt something, he was already about to wake up. Void frontline. Okay, I'll talk about this later. The two of them tidied up their clothes, and Yun Nuoxing turned to look at the girl who was helping him tidy up his windbreaker. He asked knowingly, "What were you planning to do just now?" The girl trembled, tilted her head, and stammered with a red face, He understood what she meant, but the girl herself didn't seem to be mentally prepared. He couldn't help but say, "How can the person who ambushes you not be mentally prepared?" Siyu lowered her head even more. "You didn't wake up just now, Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes and lightly knocked on her head. He sighed and pulled the girl to the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Blue Phoenix leaning against the wall with her hands behind her back. When she saw the two of them walk out, she calmly looked at them. After a while, her pink eyes curved into crescents, and she revealed a slightly strange smile. It didn't work. "I thought it was my turn, Yun Nuoxing." Okay, this girl also participated this time. Could she not be so energetic when she woke up? He felt that his chastity would be lost sooner or later, and he would drown in the land of women, unconsciously holding the Nethervoid sword and charging into enemy lines. No, this definitely couldn't happen. He felt a little shaken. Oh hell, he had been shaken a long time ago. However, because his foundation was solid, it was fine as long as it didn't suddenly collapse. It couldn't collapse, at least not now. TSK, would it be better if he lost his humanity earlier? But he felt that he was already crazy enough. Was it still not enough? Forget it. I'll think about it when I wake up one day and find out that I was raped. Anyway, I need to mentally prepare myself first. Once I'm ready, I'll just throw it to the back of my mind and let it stay there. Seeing Little Star's expression change, Feng Qinghuang pulled Siyu aside and whispered, Did you force yourself on little star when he woke up? No, after he woke up, I took off his clothes and I didn't have the courage, I was so close. Little star's expression is a little exaggerated. He's probably having a mental struggle. The two girls looked at each other. Siyu lowered her head and mumbled like a child whose plan had failed. Feng Qinghuang was quite calm. She pulled Siyu to little star's side and poked his face. Let's go. You've been sleeping for 20 years. The void front line has changed a lot. Yun Nuoshing came back to his senses. He looked at the two girls with a weird expression and couldn't help but mumble, trying to change the topic by force. Feng Qinghuang pointed at the door that was still open. Then, let's talk some more? Forget it. Let's go. No, wait a minute. I might have to talk about this topic today. Yun Nuoshing stopped and took 2 steps back carefully. He looked at the two girls with a little shock. You don't have anything else to do, right? Oh no. Feng Qinghuang shrugged cutely. Her indifferent expression faded away and was replaced with a reserved smile. Since the plan failed, we can't do anything now. Let's find another opportunity to act later. Yun Nuoshing. Can you not use such a reserved expression to say such words that make my heart skip a beat? He had slept for 20 years. In terms of time, such a short period of time did not affect him much. He was more used to sleeping for a long time. After he woke up, he thought about it for a while. Perhaps, other than the fact that he was injured all over and too involved with the source law before he fell asleep, it was also because he accidentally relaxed. That was why he slept so soundly. The source law that he had been longing for was finally completed. It was normal for him to breathe a sigh of relief and fall asleep while relaxing. 20 years was considered a long time in the normal perspective of time. But in the abnormal perspective of time, especially for them who could easily cross eras, it was not particularly long. It would pass in the void front line in a flash. The void front line just happened to hit an important time, and these 20 years had passed. Well, he did not know if there would be any drastic changes in these 20 years. Anyway, he took a look at Node 0. Well, although he could not pinpoint exactly what had changed, he felt that there was a slight change. Node 0 had changed because it was melted by mini-void turbulence. After it was rebuilt, other than the tower in the center, everything else was completely different. And well, the void seal, the realm of order, and so on seemed to have changed a little, as if something had been changed based on the source law. His expression changed a few times, and he could not help but sigh. Yes, based on the source law, there were a lot of things that needed to be changed. The domain that was originally used to eliminate the chaos tide mark and suppress the power of chaos was replaced with the large environmental domain of the source law. Hui and Suifeng probably made the change after they made their choice. He did not have to worry about that. What he had to worry about was the pile of things that needed to be changed. Before he stepped out of the creation sanctum, he felt in advance that there were tons of things piled up at the gate. As soon as he stepped out, they would all collapse and bury him. You guys are just one step away from the high-level Yuanshi. You guys are stuck by the seal. Suddenly hearing Little Star's sigh, Blue Phoenix and Siyu both turned their heads and saw him looking at them with a gratified smile. I suddenly remembered a few years ago when you guys were still little ones. Time passed. Unknowingly, you guys have also stood at this height. Yes. Time has really gone a long way. Siyu put on a rather serious expression and nodded. She reached out and patted his arm, putting on a very reliable look. So in the future, you can tell us anything, we will cover you. Yun Nuoshing pulled her hair and responded very seriously. I have nothing to hide from you guys. You guys know what I know. But if you want to talk about covering me, it's still too early, little girl. Oh, it seems so. The three of them looked at each other and laughed a few times. They quickly walked toward the gate of the Sanctum of Creation and into the Observer's dimension. This space was as busy as ever, and the sea of energy was still churning as before. Now, it had completely turned into a colorful ocean dotted with endless starlight. The source of the structure seemed to have completed a long transformation and metamorphosis according to the step-by-step instructions he left behind. It was also when he saw the colorful ocean that his mind became truly awake, and a lot of thoughts began to swirl in his mind. At the same time, he also picked up a lot of things that he put down before he fell asleep. Ah, you're finally awake. The space in front of him suddenly bloomed with golden light. Hui, who was wearing a flashy golden robe, walked out of it. There were 2 dark circles under his eyes on his handsome face. He looked like a Yazi who had not slept or rested for 20 years and was about to die. Dandruff Observer, you left a lot of mess for us to clean up after ourselves. There are still a lot of things here that we can't finish. How are you going to compensate us for these 20 years? Thank you for your hard work. Yun Nuoshing laughed dryly. He was indeed a little too relaxed and had been lying down for a while. Compensation? Let me think about it for a while. Hui stared at him with a serious face for a minute. Finally, he could not help but laugh out loud. He patted Maple on the shoulder. Okay, I'm just kidding. You've finally recovered. We were worried and relieved to see you asleep. First, we were worried that you might have run into some trouble. Second, you haven't had a good rest for a long time. So we didn't let anyone disturb you. We just let you and Blue Phoenix check on you from time to time. Well, now that you've woken up, there are a lot of things that have been delayed. First of all, we put his hands on his hips and turned to look at the 2 girls beside Maple. You 2 should go for the origin baptism, right? Blue Phoenix and you shrunk their necks at once. Yun Nuoshing was startled. No, it's been 20 years and you haven't gone for the origin baptism yet? They insisted on waiting for you to wake up before going for the origin baptism. In addition to them, your families Jing Yuanji, Shuang, Yuan Kong, and Ming. These 2 need to be seen by you personally before dealing with them, and some of Qing Jun's people are also waiting. They said that they want you to see them, so it has been delayed until now. Yun Nuoshing tilted his head after listening. I can understand Yuan Kong and that girl. But what about the others? Why must they delay until I come over? You put her hands on her hip. It's a ritual. Hui. Ritual my ass. Don't you want to wait for your Maple to be present before going for the origin baptism? It's like you're in a very, 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 very important occasion and you want an important person to be by your side. You scratched his head in embarrassment. He pulled Little Star's arm and swung it back and forth. Hui crossed his arms and said righteously, coincidentally, I've also delayed it. By the way, it was Qing Jun who first proposed this idea. Yun Nuoshing. Both of them are like children. Well, in addition to our group, all the Order warriors at the front line have completed the origin baptism. The new inheritors. Today is also the day that Suifeng and more than 100 people are training together. Yun Nuoshing turned around and looked inside the sanctum of creation. How many new inheritors are there? Hui responded dryly and shifted his gaze to the side. Seeing this, Yun Nuoshing more or less understood what was going on. It was probably within his expectations. Not many, currently there are only 5. A portion of the people who have a high probability of becoming the inheritors have not undergone the origin baptism, so this portion is not included. 5. Yun Nuoshing counted with her fingers. It feels like the situation is about the same as the original plan? By the way, do I know any of these 5 people? Oh, there's your little girl Daotian. I know the other 4, but you don't. 3 of them are warriors from our family, and the other is a warrior from the Void frontline. Okay, the standard answer, he did not know that many people. As for whether the situation is the same as the original plan, I don't dare to say, and I don't dare to predict. This mouth of mine, isn't it? The Void is going to collapse if I talk too much. Let's not talk too much, and let everyone decide for themselves. Hui put his hands on his waist and bared his teeth. Although the essence that would be tested and determined by the origin baptism would not collapse just because he said a few words, well, anyway, he just had to say less. It just so happens that everyone is now in the domain of the origin baptism. Let's go together and gather all the remaining people who have not undergone the origin baptism. With you there, the condition is met and they will not drag it out. The domain of the origin baptism had now become a fixed domain of the sanctum of creation. Although everyone did not forget that it was originally a garbage dump. Garbage dump? 20 years had passed, and the fortress of origin had long been finished. But let's talk about it later. Things had to be dealt with one by one. The fortress of origin could not run away. It was still in the heart of the world. This place was still full of starlight, reflecting the void starfield of the mythological era's defense line. From a distance, it looked like an ordinary starry sky. No one would think of the meaning behind it. This time, it seemed that a vague net had appeared directly in the starry sky. If it was not unexpected, it should be the net of origin and order. It could not be seen before, and they had to mark each point and give themselves hints to connect the net in their mind. Hui, Blue Phoenix, can you see the net above? Yun Nuoshing raised her finger and pointed at the starry sky. Siyu raised her head and looked at the sky, her eyes reflecting the starlight. There isn't. Hui also replied, nothing has changed? This place has been here for many years, and I have not seen anything. Wait, according to this situation, did you see something? Is there something extra? It's not that there's anything new. It's just that some things can be seen more directly. Yun Nuoshing blinked his eyes. The reflected net was a little blurry, and only the outline could be seen. It was densely packed throughout the entire void star field, and it looked quite spectacular. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I've been floating in the source environment for 20 years, although it feels like a longer time has passed. Hui was stunned. Your consciousness has been floating in the source void for the past 20 years? Yes, I can't come back and I can't move. I'm like a bystander looking at the source environment and looking at myself. Yun Nuoshing took the lead and walked forward with her arms crossed. Logically speaking, returning one's consciousness to the source environment for a long time would be as tiring as a dog, and when one's consciousness is about to blur, one would be forcibly sent back to the real world. This time, I don't know why I stayed there for so long. The last few times I entered the source environment, it was at most half a day. The essence has changed? Is there any specific change? There seems to be a little bit, look. Yun Nuoshing stopped in his tracks and extended his hand towards Chao Hui and the two girls. He took a deep breath and his eyes became sharp. After a moment, his body suddenly emitted a pure white energy. There seemed to be something mixed in the white, making the white look grayish and silvery at the same time. If one's senses were removed and only used their eyes to judge, they would only be able to see that it was pure white. It was pure and clean, like a small ball of weak white flame wrapped around his surface. Looks like your observer form, but the aura and state are completely different. This aura. Hui stepped forward and waved his hand on the layer of white energy on Maple's body to sense it. This is completely the strange aura of the primordial void. Your own aura is gone too, as if it has been completely covered by the aura of the source origin. Yun Nuoshing continued to release the aura of the source origin for a while before withdrawing it. She waved her hand with a troubled expression. I'm not familiar with the source origin yet, so I'm going to use it directly. Phew, it's a bit tiring. It's not easy. Just as Hui was about to continue asking, a few rays of light suddenly fell in front of them. A group of people rushed out from the light with a hurried look on their faces. Their energy surged, and when they looked in front of them, they were stunned. Little brother Feng? You're finally awake. The fully armed Sui Feng and Brother Lei saw little Brother Feng and the others as soon as they came out. They greeted them with confusion and quickly looked around. After a while, they asked little Brother Feng and Hui Jun in confusion, "Did you see the domain crack just now? We inexplicably felt the aura of the source origin. It appeared very suddenly, and it tore a corner of the domain in half a second. Now it's gone again." Hui and Qing Huang turned their heads to look at the observer who was playing dumb. Sui Feng, Brother Lei, and the others were stunned for a moment. They looked at him, and then saw little Brother Feng use the power of the source origin again. The domain cracked again in their senses, and they all put on a look of realization. This guy almost tore down the source domain as soon as he woke up. The aura of the source origin. The girl in white came forward, and under everyone's stunned gaze, she suddenly stretched out her hands and pressed his face. She looked up and down for a while, then put her hands down and circled around him. From time to time, she leaned forward and sniffed as if she was sniffing his scent. Yun Nuoxing shuddered. This strange action. He seemed to remember that there was an origin heavenly god who also fiddled with him like this when he was lying down, treating him as something, a strange thing, touching and smelling it. Before the girl in white could smell him until his scalp tingled, she stepped back. She looked up at him slightly and thought for a while. The essence has been removed. It is confirmed that it is a creation of the source origin. My judgment is correct. The traces of the past have not dissipated, and there is no impact. In other words, the essence has now been exposed. Although there are still remnants of the past characteristics, under the control of a higher level of essence, the traces of the past are not an obstacle. Sui Feng heard this and also came forward to pinch little Brother Feng's arm and shoulder. He looked around and nodded. That is indeed the case. But just from the appearance alone, if one's cognition has reached our level, they can only think of little Brother Feng as an energy lifeform. It is not easy to judge the essence of the source origin. Derivative of nothingness and source origin. Now, can you be more specific and judge that it is a creation of the source origin? Is it also a creation of life? It's not specifically referring to any of the creations of primordial. Rather, primordial's creations can only be categorized as creature-type lifeforms. It's not accurate, but they are indeed special creature-type lifeforms. The white-clothed girl corrected him. I just woke up. Can you not look at me like I am a creation? Yun Nuoxing was speechless. He was all too familiar with the look of this group of people. In the past, he used to look at his creations with the same look. These could be dismantled, these could not be dismantled. Now that they were looking at him with the same look, they were probably thinking about how many pieces he could be dismantled with his height of 1.8 meters. The girl in white patted Sui Feng and asked him to move away. She came forward and looked at Feng Ling again. Her gray eyes were filled with a purple-gold luster, just like the formation she cast. Feng Ling felt a little creeped out and goosebumps appeared on his skin. After a while, she reached out and grabbed his hand. She said calmly, "Make a baby." Yun Nuoxing. Everyone. The whole place was silent. No one was standing. There was a circle of people lying on the ground in all directions. Yun Nuoxing trembled as if he had been electrocuted. He quickly shook off the hand of the girl who was usually too calm. No, her current expression also told him that she was very calm. However, the words she said made everyone feel like their nerves were about to collapse. Why did everything feel so high after waking up? When he opened his eyes, he was almost raped by Cu. Blue Phoenix was still leaning against the wall outside, indicating that she was queuing up. When he came to the domain of a source origin, he was suddenly caught by Hour, and said that he wanted to make a baby or something. Did he hit his head in there? Wait a minute, wait a minute. Cu quickly jumped up and hugged Little Star. She looked at the girl in white and looked like she was protecting her food. She said carefully, "First come, first served. You have to line up." Yun Nuoxing's face was gloomy. "Kill me. I might have come to the wrong place. This is definitely another timeline world. Chapter 1950. Sleep was a matter of luck, because he did not know what would happen the next time he opened his eyes. Especially for someone like him who had a weak sense of time, it was not just a matter of 2 or 3 hours if he did not want to stay in bed. It could be 2 or 3,000 years, 20 or 30,000 years, or even 4 or 500 million years, or even 6 or 700 billion years. Everything would change in an instant, and the universe would turn into a flat plane, the galaxy would dry up, and the worlds would become empty. Well, this time, the consequences of staying in bed were not that serious. No, he felt that the serious consequences of staying in bed were not reflected in the changes in time and the world, but in interpersonal relationship. For example, it was understandable that the two girls wanted to take the next step. After all, they had been together for so many years. Could he be considered as acquiescing? Acquiescing? Well, acquiescing to this situation meant that he felt that the timing and time were not particularly good. He was afraid that if he took this step, his consciousness would weaken. He was a little worried and did not dare to try it, but he did not reject it either. He was not afraid of changes, just a little worried. After all, if his consciousness weakened, the impact on this matter. Phew, forget it, let's not talk about it first. We'll talk about it when the changes come. But what's with Xiaoshi? It was not the first day that they met. Whether it was the first time they met, or the 5 eras they had known each other, he did not see the slightest sign of it. Yes, absolutely not. It was definitely not that he was slow or anything, he really was not. Usually they did not talk much. It was only recently that they talked more because they had to deal with the many trivial matters related to the origin of the world, so they talked more frequently. They went from saying hello every day to frequently communicating with colleagues. In the end, it was just about work. Occasionally, they would talk about old stories, but rarely about themselves. That was it. Speaking of the relationship between the two of them, he thought about it. Actually, his relationship with the second-generation inheritors was the same. It was higher than that of a relative, but they were also comrades. According to the origin heavenly God and the others, they could be considered as family. At this moment, they saw each other all the time and lived under the same roof. Therefore, it could be considered as such. Although this roof was especially big, but that was the extent of their relationship. Then, she suddenly pulled his hand and said that she wanted to have a child. His brain didn't react. He felt that he needed to find a chaotic concept body to fight with all his strength to calm down. On the other side, Sui Qing was chatting with the white-clothed girl excitedly. Normally, Sui Qing was quite calm. Therefore, it was obvious that the white-clothed girl had just thrown a bomb at her from how excited she was. Although he was very agitated, he still calmly explained the reason. Teacher's long-cherished wish was to see the creation of life and the second generation of life born from the creation of life. Unfortunately, I was the only one at that time. I didn't have the other half, nor did I have the time to create a new one. Everyone. This reason is simply disgraceful, okay? As a god and devil, why would the god of origin do something so inhumane? Huey's face twitched as he said this. Sui Feng and the others couldn't help but smile bitterly. They also wanted to say this, but they didn't dare to say it. After all, it was a god. They were thinking of a more tactful way to put it. Yun Nuoxing's face twitched as he heard this. His eyes were about to split open, but he still had to defend the god of origin. No. Think about it carefully. They have more than 300 eras to time to fix it. If they really want to fix it, since it hasn't been fixed even after 300 eras, and it's just a long-cherished wish, it means that it's just a thought. It's just like how I keep saying that I'm going to collapse the void of order, but you guys didn't hear me actually say when I'm going to collapse the void of order, right? It's just a thought, so you don't have to take it seriously. Well, the last sentence was for the white-clothed girl. It couldn't be that the god of origin forced this wish on her, could it? If that was the case, he would definitely drag that person out and beat him up the next time he enters the shattered continent of origin. Whether or not he could beat him was another matter, but beating him up to show his determination was very important. From his slightly twisted and ferocious expression, the white-clothed girl could tell that he had misunderstood something. She calmly explained, "My teacher and I have discussed this matter seriously. His original intention was to explore the path of essence that I walk. The creation of life and the second generation of life seems to be a more advanced path to explore the path of essence. My teacher was more interested in this matter than I am, but he couldn't find the right conditions within the void. After a long time, he could only ignore it. Although he didn't force this wish on me, I still care about it, just like how you care about fighting against the chaos." Yun Nuoxing's mouth fell open, but after a moment, he was so anxious that he stomped his feet. "I was forced to do this, and because I've been tormented for so long, I had no choice but to treat it as my own matter. These are two different things. Two different things. If you care about it, then you don't have to care so much, right? Right? Yun Nuoxing clenched his teeth. He finally understood why this lass had suddenly started nagging him about having children. So there was actually such a situation involved. But, in short, this situation was very shameful. Sure enough, the next time he entered the shattered origin continent, he would beat this brat up without a second word. Originally, I didn't care. After all, I didn't have the conditions. But now there are conditions." As the white-clothed girl spoke, she suddenly came in front of him and held his hands. She looked up at him slightly and said expressionlessly, "So, have a child." Yun Nuoxing was so anxious that he was sweating. "Stop, this is a very serious matter. Don't talk about it so casually. Don't be so casual." "It's not casual. I've thought about it. Moreover, I've just done an in-depth inspection. The conditions are met." He was referring to the way she pinched and sniffed him, and then stood at the side in deep thought. "You call that deep thought?" Seeing his stiff face, the white-clothed girl thought for a moment and carefully listed the conditions. Human form, creator's body, good looks, good strength, and also from the origin system, the best choice. Everyone! Was this a blind date? Speaking of which, the criteria for choosing a partner was a bit high. The criteria of being from the origin system alone was enough to eliminate countless lives in the void of order, and she even had to include the creator's body, Ijai. Yun Nuoxing's face turned red. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words. "I have a family." "Oh." She was stunned for a moment. She let go of his hand, lowered her head and thought for a moment. Then, she turned around and left. Seeing this, he let out a sigh of relief. Just as he thought that this matter was over, she continued calmly, "I'll go and talk to Ming." Yun Nuoxing. He didn't roll his eyes and faint because he had just woken up. Seeing that she really went straight to the depths of the origin realm to look for the little angel, Yun Nuoxing was so anxious that he stomped his feet. He quickly looked at Suifeng and the other two who seemed to be watching the show from the beginning. "Hurry up and talk to her." Suifeng covered her face and turned around. "She's the most stubborn of the second generation. I can't talk to her." Yun Nuoxing. "I feel like I'm going to play ambush on all sides when I wake up because I feel like I'm being targeted all of a sudden. Sooner or later, my integrity and chastity will be at stake." Suifeng patted him on the shoulder sympathetically and sighed. "You have to be careful. Xiao Xiao is serious. As far as I know, the last time she showed such a serious expression was when she received the task of guarding a node from the gods. At that time, the node was besieged by 3 chaos concept bodies. But because of the massive magic circle set by the gods and Xiao Zhao's own characteristics, she was able to hold on. Well, the latter part is my own speculation. After all, I didn't know this condition at that time. Yun Nuoxing's face was still twisted. He did not see any change in her expression. He did not know how Suifeng could see the change in her expression from her overly calm face. In short, she's using the mentality of guarding the defensive line of order or fighting the chaos concept bodies to talk to me about having a child. Suifeng and the other two thought for a moment. Then, they sighed deeply and nodded. This was the battle mode, and the battle mode with all her strength. I think I should go back to the source and lie down for a while. Hui pressed on his shoulder and sighed. Wake up, buddy. You have to work. There are many things that have been put aside for 20 years. But he felt that his personal safety was threatened. Ahem, to be serious, who was it again? Oh, Xiao Xiao, right? Although he did not even know her real name, he knew that they had known each other for a long time. As for their relationship, it was just like what he had just said. But he really did not expect that they would suddenly leap to this step. Xiao Xiao was also a beauty. She was so beautiful that it was not surprising that she had more than bubbly. Her body was also not bad. These were all normal attributes. Although her face was always expressionless, it seemed that she was even more emotionless than he was. I digress. Can you not admire me so seriously? Anyway, this matter was ridiculous in all aspects. He thought anxiously for a while, but he had no clue at all. Suddenly, he threw a pleading look at Cu and Blue Phoenix. Then, he saw the two girls standing a little far away from them with their arms around each other's shoulders and whispering. Little Star's child. I wonder who it will look more like. Blue Phoenix, do you plan to have a child? I'm fine with anything. Look at Little Star. What do you plan to do? Me? I don't want one for the time being. But Little Star's child sounds very interesting. What do you think it will be like when it's born? Both of them are creature-type life forms. Will they maintain the initial appearance of a blurry cloud for a period of time, or will they be in human form when they are born? Probably in human form. If the influence is strong enough, it should be able to skip the initial chaotic state and directly take shape. Speaking of which, Little Star's race only has one child. Does he want to have a few more children to increase the population of his race? Speaking of which, it seems to be the case. But Little Star himself is not in a hurry. Yun Nuoxing. It's over. This side is already planning to coordinate with the outside. I'm gone. I have to retreat quickly. If I don't run, I'll be gone. No. Why is the girl who just said that she wants to line up now planning to coordinate with the outside? Just as he was about to open the portal and go to the observer dimension to find a random corner to hide, Little Hour came back and quickly came in front of them and said, Ming agreed. Yun Nuoxing. You idiot angel. Idiot. Big idiot angel. At this time, you should reject it. Reject it. Reject it. Then let's not delay. Little Hour rushed up and grabbed his arm. As she pulled him away, she said, I heard from the teacher that there are 3 methods. Wait for me to tell you in detail. When Yun Nuoxing's face was ashen, he suddenly heard this voice from beyond the sky. In an instant, he had an idea. He grabbed Little Hour and said, Wait a minute. What kind of 3 methods are they? Yes, there must be a hidden meaning here. There must be another method. There were not many normal life forms in Honest Port, especially him. And her, they were all abnormal. There must be some ambiguity here. The method of the human race and the 2 methods of creature-type life forms like us. Stop, stop. Hui immediately turned around and pushed Suifeng, Cu, and the others into the depths of the origin realm. You two can talk about this in private. We'll be waiting for you inside. Hui said to Suifeng and Cu. Don't go. Don't go. Don't go. Don't leave me here alone, you bastard. At least leave Qing Huang here. Yun Nuoxing immediately stretched out her hand towards the people who were running away. She looked desperate, as if she had just been pushed into a pit of fire. I'll definitely push you into the void and beat you up, Hui, you bastard. Hui and the others, who had already run away, shuddered when they heard the miserable roar that spread across half of the origin dimension. They covered their ears and pretended not to hear it. They ran even faster. After a tragic howl, Yun Nuoshing turned his head to look at the girl in white who was pulling him but didn't move. Seeing that she kept staring at him, as if waiting for instructions, the two of them were left feeling a little awkward. Well, you can continue, she nodded and said softly. There are two methods of creature-type life forms. One is related to the soul, and the other is related to the origin structure. Oh, he understood. After all, they were both creature-type life forms. The most important part was naturally the origin structure and the soul. Energy life forms could also choose this method to leave behind offspring. However, he was a little unclear about the specific operation. He did not know about it because he did not need it. It was impossible to not understand it at all. He knew that it was to let the soul or the origin structure of the two fuse, but there seemed to be a more specific explanation. He did not expect that he would really ask this question out of curiosity, and they really talked about this topic when they were young. If the three methods are simple, there is no need for any special treatment. If it's a simple matter of leaving behind offspring, all three methods would work without any special treatment. In fact, more methods could be developed, but it's meaningless to simply talk about the number of method. What I've discussed with my teacher is not a normal method and requires special treatment. It requires the extraction of the soul root or the construct root, with one of the soul root or the construct root as the main body and the other as a supplementary existence. I recommend you as the main body, since your essence is more advanced than mine. This method is similar to the survival of the fittest in nature, where the more efficient and important parts are chosen as the main body and the supplementary body to fuse into a whole. The new life born would usually have more excellent foundations and potential, which is equivalent to evolution. However, there would also be uncertainties, since both are creature-type life forms. Simple fusion is simple, but it might not allow everything to take shape smoothly. Yun Nuoshing thought about it and felt that it was quite normal so far. It did not seem unacceptable. Wasn't it just taking a bit of the origin structure or the origin structure? He would just treat it as if he was creating something again. Although this time it was creating a child or something. Ugh, it was still a little awkward. But he had to stop. He had to confirm the process because he heard that it may not be possible. It needs to be done in a deep soul fusion, young master answered calmly. Yun Nuoshing slapped his face. It was as he expected. It could not be taken out and had to be done inside. Moreover, the point was not the deep soul fusion, but the word proceed after the fusion. Yes, the latter was the key. As for the latter part, it was the blind spot in his knowledge. Yes, he did not know. He was not him, he did not know. Although it seemed to be a little different from the first method, anyway, he did not know. That's the situation. Young master thought for a while and confirmed that he did not miss anything. He nodded and opened his hands to him. Do you want me to go into your soul? Or do you want to come to my place? I recommend using your soul as the main venue. The capacity is bigger. Yun Nuoshing felt a headache coming on. He quickly stopped the topic. Well, that won't do. It's too rushed. This is not just a matter of creating something and adding a lump to it. This is. I know. I've just confirmed it. The conditions are suitable, both are suitable. Young master tilted his head. Or do you think that I don't have enough conditions? You need to wait for me to advance to the higher level before. No, it's not about that. Yun Nuoshing's head was buzzing. He looked at her with cold sweat. Anyway, it's that kind of problem. Young master seemed to understand something. The prerequisites are not enough? Yun Nuoshing nodded vigorously. He watched as she slowly put down her hands. She lowered her head slightly and pondered for a while. Then, she raised her head and looked at him with those gray eyes. She said softly, "If that's the case, I was too hasty. Let's start with the prerequisite. Unwashing." She did not intend to let him go. Anyway, this strange topic that suddenly popped up ended here. If it did not end, he might become autistic. He needed to find a chaotic concept body and have a fierce battle to recover. Of course, it was almost the same now. He felt that the damage to his spirit had reached 80%. The speed of the damage was unprecedentedly fast. The two of them walked side by side into the depths of the domain of origin. Young Master still had an expressionless face, but he could feel that her attention was beginning to fall on him, with a sense of locking on to him. Well, this was one of the reasons for his headache. If not for today's conversation, he might not have felt anything just by focusing on her. Well, no. In short, when the two of them walked into the depths of the origin domain, Hui and his group were already waiting there. Looking at his large family, they were all looking at him with strange gazes. Hui must have told them about this strange topic. Just listen to what he said, and you'll know what he meant. "You're done?" That despicable expression caused Yun Nuoshing's skull to explode on the spot. Pure white energy surged, and his facial expression was so dark that only a pair of gorgeous eyes could be seen clearly. He slowly raised his right hand, and a head-sized pure white and gorgeous energy ball suddenly appeared in his hand, causing everyone to turn pale with fright. They hurriedly dodged, leaving Hui, who was covered in cold sweat, on the spot. 10,000 Creations Guide Origin falls to nothingness. Bright white fireworks soared into the sky. The loud explosion was accompanied by a shrill scream that spread throughout the domain of origin. The raging power of origin instantly tore the domain of origin in half. Little Brother Feng's increase in strength is clearly visible. This is the upgraded version of 10,000 Creations Guide. Fiery Wind put his hand over his eyes and looked at the huge white fireworks. He turned to his sister and said, "Sister, help hold down the domain. This place is about to crack." "I can't hold it down. Don't worry. It's fine as long as it doesn't crack completely," Sui Qing said calmly. Her blue eyes reflecting the white energy flames that were exploding in the sky. "If you don't reach the defensive power of a high-level yuan shi, you won't be able to defend against it. However, the target of the attack is Hui Jun, so you don't have to worry." Everyone calmly sat down and looked at the firework. 10,000 Creations Guide would explode for a few minutes. Look at these gorgeous fireworks. Every ray of light was the light of truth from the void. Sui Qing looked around and carefully retreated to the side of Little Hour, who was looking up at the firework. She whispered, "Are you really going to?" "Yes, but it has to be put on hold for a while." The girl in white nodded. "The prerequisite is not enough." Sui Qing sighed in her heart. After all, it was Feng Ling. It was not difficult to understand. However, the prerequisite was quite difficult. The girl in white turned her head and looked at her. "How can the prerequisite be achieved quickly?" "I don't know." Sui Qing shook her head. "You and I have never been in a relationship before. Do you want me to ask Little Feng?" "Oh, but Little Feng seems to have only failed twice. Moreover, he doesn't have much experience with boys." "Well, it's very difficult." Sui Qing looked at Little Hour's serious expression. She thought for a while and came up with a bad idea. She pointed to the side with her eyes at Cu and Ming's family. "Maybe you can talk to them. Although it's probably not a good idea, after all, it's an open attack on their base camp." Little Hour took a minute to think. Then, she turned around and walked toward Cu and the rest. Sui Qing's pretty face changed a little. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. This was really a bad idea. She did not believe that Little Hour did not realize it. However, if she really did it well, Xiao Shi was an emotionless idiot, while Feng Ling was an abnormal warrior who put all his talent into battle. He only left a tiny bit of emotion to deal with his whole family, but to round it off, he could also be considered an emotionless idiot. In any case, they were both emotionless. Feng Ling was slightly better, at least he could faintly sense other people's feelings. Xiao Shi. Anyway, the two of them were just too funny to watch together. Throwing Hui, who had been blasted into charcoal, to the ground, Yun Nuoxing rolled her eyes and looked at everyone. Now, let's talk about serious business. We have been talking about serious business all this time. We have not slacked off. Yuan Kong shrugged. But you, big idiot, do you want to spend some time to familiarize yourself with your new power form? This should be the initial form, right? My matter is not urgent. I will slowly get used to it. This form is just a half-finished product. If I want to improve it further and use it in an official battle, I will need to spend some time. Yun Nuoxing waved her hand and looked at Cu and Blue Phoenix. Well, I am also here this time. You should go and complete the origin baptism. Wait a moment. I will call little Qing Zi and Jing Yuanji over. A certain charcoal body on the ground quickly stood up and cleaned himself. He muttered in his soul for a while. Then, he gave everyone a thumbs up. Done. They will be here in a while. Let's go to the center first. Finally, the day has come. Sui Feng rubbed his hands and led the way to the center of the origin domain with a smile. Finally, it is time for the main event. I have waited for 20 years. Let me, Kong Kong, have a few more inheritors today. Ha 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 ha. Sui Feng's strange smile and tiptoeing as he walked left Yun Nuoxing and the others in a daze. Yun Nuoxing could not help but look at Sui Feng. What happened to your brother? Oh. He has always been curious about which god's power Blue Phoenix and the others will inherit. He has been waiting for you since 20 years. He must be very excited when you wake up. Sui Feng shrugged. I don't know what he is excited about. Usually, he would get excited for no reason. Don't worry about him. Yun Nuoxing looked at Sui Feng, who was jumping around with a strange expression on his face. He had encountered so many strange things today. He felt that everyone had become strange after he woke up. For example, even when Xiao Shi was walking in front, she would occasionally pay attention to him who was walking behind her. It was the little angel came to him. Her white wings covered half of his body. She slightly folded her wings and gently touched his cheek with the tip of her wings. You refused? Yun Nuoxing. It is normal to refuse. But why did you agree to it? The little angel shrugged. I don't really care about it. Besides, what she said was quite interesting. I also want to see how the two of you are doing. I am a bit curious. Yun Nuoxing. He had been sold, and he had been sold just because he was curious. Chapter 1951. There was no need to burn incense, bathe, fast, and change clothes. There was also no need to pray devoutly for 1,000,000 years, and there was no need to physically offer up everything. As mentioned before, this was an emergency period of war, so dealing with this kind of thing was basically just taking a stroll inside. If a true inheritor unexpectedly appeared, then the second stage would be carried out. If there was no one, then so be it. If there was no one, then it was just an ordinary origin baptism. After being branded with all kinds of origins, one could continue doing what one was supposed to do. There was no torment at all, and there was no need to put in any effort or have any tests or whatnot. There was no such thing. However, the second stage, which is to lie in the pillar for 10 or 20 days, will be over. The structural origins will all be branded with weak origin laws and weak origin energy, which can be considered a fundamental change. Then there is the matter of the energy. It is time to start the transformation of the energy source. As one of the newcomer representatives, Dao Tian was now explaining to Cu and Qing Huang what they would encounter during the origin baptism. I inherited the power of a heavenly god of origin that is related to spiritual power. In addition to the origin energy, There is also a lot of explanation and various ways to use spiritual power. Well, all the concepts I had in the first half of my life have been smashed to pieces. You all have to be mentally prepared for your worldview to be crushed. Although it sounds very shocking, worldview and whatnot. See, you muttered softly and turned to look at Little Star. When everyone heard that the little girl did not finish her sentence and saw that she had turned her head to look at one of the observers, they all muttered in their hearts, "There is a huge source of worldview crushing here. No matter how tenacious one's worldview is, it will still be crushed to pieces." Yun Nuoshing had just entered her daily state of being absent-minded and thinking of ways to destroy the underworld when she felt that the atmosphere was not right. She subconsciously turned her head and saw that everyone was staring at her. She could not help but be startled. "What's wrong? What's wrong? Why are you all staring at me?" Qing Yu smiled calmly and said, "Looking at you being absent-minded." Yun Nuoshing. "Stop fooling around, I thought something happened." From left to right they were Qing Jun, Jing Yuanji, I Qing, people they didn't know, 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 Xing LV Min, people they didn't know, 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 people they didn't know. Lord Feng, Lord Hui. I Qing, who was the first to see them coming over, raised his hand high and waved vigorously. The group also stopped talking and uniformly saluted each other. There were at least 7 or 8 different kinds of etiquette here, and it was hard to tell where they came from. Anyway, he understood that the large group of unknown people who looked like they were here to cause trouble were definitely from his family. They had been focused on causing trouble for more than 10 eras without stopping. "Long time no see, can you not put on such an expression as if you have seen a ghost?" Min, who had not seen them for a long time, raised his hand to greet them. His face was like the arrival of the warm spring and the earth had just thawed. Although it was still stiff, there were more or less signs of activity. "When you all gathered together, I was already a bit surprised. Why are there so many people waiting for the origin baptism? Do you all still want to be companions?" Yun Nuoshing said with her face twitching. Min raised his hand and pointed to I Qing and Lord Qing. "I wanted to come a long time ago, but they stopped me. They said something about the finale or the finale. In short, they made me wait until now." Xing Lu, who was squatting on the ground and playing with fire, stood up quickly. "Same." Jing Yuanji said softly, "Same? Oh, I also wanted to wait. We finished the baptism long ago. Shui Yan is here for the baptism today, so we came over to take a look." Ji Hanshao reached out and patted Ji Shuiyan's head. The latter turned her head and bared her teeth at him. "Stupid father, I don't need you to worry about me." The mischievous warriors of the heavenly realm said, "We were all delayed by Lord Qing. Ritual. Ritual. It's very important." Lord Qing, the culprit, put his hands on his hips and said righteously, "Of course we have to wait for Lord Feng to be here. Put down the brick, I didn't expect Lord Feng to lie down for 20 years. Yun Nuoshing was stunned. "Wait, I'm not taking the blame for this. I didn't know you guys had such a prearranged event like a festival. Speaking of which, when I was fighting with the source law, you guys were a little. Can't you call me? Everyone murmured and said in unison, the busiest guy in the Void frontline, who can call you Yun Nuoshing, Suifeng and the rest were working on the core of the origin territory. After a while, they landed from the starry sky and clapped their hands. Alright, we've made the specifications higher so we can handle it faster. Go, the energy consumption in this state is a little fast. A large group of people raised and clapped their hands and dispersed towards the origin territory. Although they did not really go through the origin baptism, everyone had rehearsed it many times. They were just waiting to execute it. Yun Nuoshing turned his head and saw Siyu nervously tugging at his clothes. He thought for a moment, reached out and patted her hair. Go, don't be so nervous. Just let nature take its course. He also opened his arms and hugged Blue Phoenix. He said a few words, very calmly. According to what everyone said, the girls around him were the most promising ones, which meant they were the most promising ones to become the inheritors. This invisible expectation itself was a kind of pressure. It was pressure that came from other people's carelessness, and it was also pressure that they would put on themselves. Although he did not think it was a big deal, and it did not matter whether they succeeded or not, this was obviously not an excuse that could persuade them. It was fine if others put pressure on him, but if it was pressure on himself, to be honest, he did not know how to get rid of it. If he knew, he would not have tormented himself like this. Watching Siyu and Blue Phoenix walk into the depths of the origin territory, Yuankong also rushed over and hugged the big idiot. Big idiot, what about my sister and I? Are we also going to go through the origin baptism? Flintlock and the others pricked up their ears. This was one of the topics that they were quite curious about. Oh, you guys, I've thought about it. Yun Nuoshing turned his head to look at Yuankong and the little angel. He pulled his hair and said seriously and slowly, there are two plans. As far as I can think of, there are two plans that have a guaranteed success rate. The first method, I will wrap you with myself, and you will go to this origin territory to walk around and be done with the baptism. The second method, you will live in my soul for a while, and I will help you with the baptism. Everyone was stunned when they heard this plan. After thinking about it carefully, they felt that it seemed to be a feasible method. It could prevent them from being harmed by the origin force when they were baptized by the death mist of the abyss. No way, this is not avoiding it, right? Yuankong narrowed her eyes slightly. Probably because she had known the big idiot for too long, she immediately caught the essence of the two plans. This is a transfer of risk, right? You will bear the risk for us? Oh, that's it. Yun Nuoshing rubbed Yuankong's head. Well, don't worry. I am the executor, and the origin force will definitely cause less harm to me than to you. So, you don't have to worry about what will happen to me. Also, at this time, I think it would be better to be tough. This is not negotiable. You can only accept these two methods or not go through the baptism. Yun Nuoshing crossed her arms and turned her head to the side. She looked at them carefully from the corner of her eyes. I don't want to pay the unnecessary price for such a small matter. Yuankong scratched her head. She had no other choice. She looked at the big idiot's cautious eyes. He looked like he wanted to be tough, but he was also worried that something would happen to them. What an idiot. If he was worried, he should have just said it out loud. Which method is faster? The little angel asked. Of course it's the first type. If I want to baptize my soul, I have to make special preparations first. If I use the domain of origin here, I can start immediately. Yun Nuoshing saw that she had made up her mind and blinked. You already have an idea? Yes, that's it. The little angel nodded and turned to look at Yuankong. Yuankong saw that her sister had already made up her mind, so she did not want to say anything to the big idiot. She just stuck her tongue out at him. How should I cooperate with you? Oh, it's not a problem. Yun Nuoshing held their hands. The origin energy flowed with a faint surge of origin energy from his body to the two of them. It wrapped around them like an energy barrier. He confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the situation and nodded. Then, he pulled the two of them into the depths of the origin force. Let's go. This will do. Seeing that the three of them started to walk in circles, Sui Feng scratched his head. Is it really okay? Although I'm quite confident in the results of Brother Feng's work, but I'm not so sure about the execution. After all, Brother Feng often goes out in one piece and comes back in a translucent state. Elder Brother Lei crossed his arms and nodded repeatedly. This was an executor who could complete a mission very quickly, very accurately, and very perfectly. However, executors often made themselves into a mess, so they were never worried about whether little Brother Feng could accomplish anything. They were more worried about what kind of mess little Brother Feng would make after he was done. Looking at the origin force, he would be bedridden for 20 years. Well, this is just an origin baptism. It shouldn't be a big problem, probably? But is the origin baptism just walking in circles? After walking around the two pillars, Yun Nuoxing was a little impatient to ask the two little angels. Although he already knew that this was a foolproof ritual, just walking in circles here was a little. Well, he could only be patient and walk in circles. The origin realm covered the starry sky and the land in front of him. The sky was the void star field, and the land was black with endless twinkling starlight. In the depths of the land, Zhang Tai could see that the starry sky was dyed with different colors. It looked like a star field, but Zhang Tai didn't know what each star represented. The void star field hung in the sky, and each star represented a different meaning. As for the land, Zhang Tai didn't know. Walking on this land, Zhang Tai would occasionally feel like he was taking a stroll in the starry sky, crossing star fields on foot. It's all like this. Because it's the simplest baptism, you don't have to do anything special. All you need to do is to be patient. Be patient, it will be over soon. Yuan Kong nodded and stretched out her other hand to touch the space beside her, as if to check if it was raining. She looked at the energy particles of different colors entering her body and soul through her palm. She observed curiously. The origin energy is this feeling. In the past, when I touched your origin energy, I was prepared in advance. This is the first time I touched the origin energy without any preparation. What a magical feeling! Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at Yuan Kong, who was actively touching the origin energy. Then, he turned to the little angel on the other side. The latter smiled faintly at him. No problem. Don't worry. I can feel that it's changing little by little. We have already prepared everything except for the order. So, there's no problem. In other words, only the order and a little bit of the order of chaos were left. It wouldn't be easy to change this. The abyss missed the power of God's destruction. If he wanted to change this essence, he might have to make some special preparations. Compared to us, you're fine, right? The little angel gently rolled up her wings and used the tip of her wings to caress his face. If there's anything unusual, tell us immediately. I'm fine for now. Don't worry. It won't affect me unless something big happens. You guys can focus on the baptism. As for the order, just ignore that part for now. Let's talk about it when I think of a way. Yun Nuoxing nodded. The little angel looked at him sideways and let out a sigh. Although she didn't want him to force it, well, at this level, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. She didn't have to worry about it for now. She just had to observe carefully along the way. Hey, big idiot. Look in front. Yuan Kong suddenly pulled his hand and made him turn his attention to the front. He saw a figure standing in front of a pillar. It was a young girl wearing a loose green dress. Her clear green eyes were staring at the pillar in front of her. She didn't look like she was attracted by the pillar. Instead, she looked like she was in a daze. Furthermore, she was very engrossed in it. If it was something else in front of her, she would probably be in a daze. It's that girl, the one who made you suffer, big idiot. Yuan Kong shook his hand and teased. Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes and ignored her strange words. He pulled the two of them and walked over. He greeted softly, Shui Yen. Ji Shui Yen was stunned for a moment. She recovered from her daze and turned to look in the direction of the voice. When she saw the three of them walking over, she was stunned. Yun Nuoxing was also stunned by her dazed expression. Remembering that Ji Shui Yen had forgotten about him, he said apologetically, sorry. I called you that subconsciously. It's not something worth apologizing for. Ji Shui Yen shook her head and walked closer to Yun Nuoxing. She seemed to be trying hard to recognize something. After a moment, she couldn't help but frown and sigh. I'm the one. I'm sorry. I really can't remember who you are. I heard a lot from Father, Siyu, Ming, and Brother Hui. But even so, I still can't remember who you are. It should be a very important memory. Even after looking at the memories that everyone pieced together, I still can't remember. If it's my name, just call me like you did just now. I don't feel annoyed when you call me that. Yun Nuoxing tilted his head. The destruction of the origin and order by the chaos was purely instinctive. It destroyed everything related to the origin instinctively, even if it was only the knowledge of the origin that existed in the memories of other life forms. Even if this girl had entered the Yuanshi realm, she still couldn't remember everything. Looking at this girl's troubled look, well, there was nothing he could do. The knowledge that had been erased couldn't be recovered. Moreover, it was erased very cleanly. It seemed that this girl had even erased the remaining memories in her soul. No, it was mainly because he didn't have a deep impression of her. After all, he had only brought this girl around the Cloud Continent for 2 rounds. Since the knowledge was gone, he could only rebuild it. Fortunately, clearing the knowledge wouldn't destroy the road. If you can't remember, then don't think about it. Forcing yourself to recall the knowledge and memories that were artificially erased, or even the part that was completely erased, will only add more trouble to yourself. Yun Nuoxing shook his head and changed the topic. Compared to that you've been watching here. Have you noticed something? Do you need me to call Sui Feng and the others over? Ji Shuyan shook her head slightly. No, I haven't felt anything yet. It's just... She sighed softly. Her eyes paused on the pillar for a moment and then moved to other places as if she was looking around the entire domain. I can always feel a familiar presence. It's very familiar. I've been forcing myself to recall, just standing here. She scratched her head embarrassedly and smiled awkwardly at the three of them. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Then let's not think about it anymore. Thank you for calling me out. If I was alone here, I don't know how long I would be in a daze. Yuan Kong thought for a moment and reached out to hold Ji Shuyan's hand. She smiled and said, Then let's go together. We'll bring you along and you won't be in a daze anymore. Ji Shuyan looked at the three of them. After a moment she grinned and said, Okay, then I'll have to trouble you. Yun Nuoxing saw that there was an extra person on her left. She looked at the row of 4 people and wanted to cover her face with her hands. Unfortunately, she did not have a third hand. It looked like a spring outing. However, this row of people didn't walk far before dispersing. The speed at which this girl was chosen as an inheritor was faster than he had expected. He originally thought that he would have to walk around a little more and walk around 2 more pillars before he could awaken his inheritance. If only I could remember the things that I accidentally forgot after becoming the inheritor. Before being stuffed into the pillar, Ji Shuyan looked at him and smiled. She said this very seriously. Although he knew it was impossible, he did not say it out loud. He could see that this girl was very attached to that memory. Although she might not know why she was so attached to it, she cared about it very much. Sui Qing came over and stuffed Ji Shuyan, who was wrapped in a ball of energy, into the purple gold pillar in front of her. She landed and said to Feng Ling and the others, It's faster than expected. Should I say that this is an alternative life form that is directly created by the gods? The result is not out of our expectations. We had expected that she would inherit the power of this god. Expected? What is the power of this god of origin? He is Xiao Shi's teacher. He is related to creation and magic circles. Yun Nuoxing took 3 seconds to finish thinking about this sentence, and then he said, "Oh, it seems that he misunderstood something before. He thought that the god of origin who was related to creation was in charge of all the creations of order. Now it seems that he was wrong. After all, there are many kinds of creations of order. The Temple of Origin, the Sanctuary of Creation, the Staff of Creation, and the Staff of Origin. These are all creations of order, but they are not limited to that." No, what was he trying to say? Oh, he wanted to say that it is not necessary for something to have a definite form to be a creation. For example, magic circles are also creations, but they are not the type of creations that have a definite form. The Origin heavenly god was also in charge of matters related to creation. This was a major branch. As for the minor branch, his main focus was probably on matters related to spirit designs. After all, he was a life form formed from spirit designs. It was very appropriate for the Origin heavenly god to take over this task. I understand Xiao Shi's side, but what does this have to do with Shuiyan? Oh, I haven't told you yet. Sui Qing turned around to look at him and said softly, Ji Shuiyan's essence was transformed into a creation-type life form by the power of origin and the law of origin. This is very strange. She should have been forcibly changed into an ordinary life form of order that was born with the power of origin and the law of origin. But for some reason, her power of origin was transformed into a creation-type life form, and her life form and life form had undergone a drastic change. Probably because the power of origin and the law of origin came from the creations of origin. Yun Nuoxing shrugged. This is also what we all thought. Although there are still some things that are unclear, but since it is a fact, there is no point in looking into it. At this time, Ji Shuiyan is a creation-type life form. Next is the question of compatibility. We looked for and matched the powers of the gods related to creation. In the end, we found this god, and Ji Shuiyan's power has the best compatibility with this god's power. Yun Nuoxing nodded. So this was the reason why Ji Shuiyan was matched with this pillar in the end. Then, after this girl completes the inheritance, she will also obtain knowledge related to magic circles, right? Yes, but it is also from the beginning. Based on the power of origin and the characteristics of her essence, it will not take long for her to reach the level corresponding to her own realm. We let Xiao Shi be in charge of Ji Shuiyan's guidance and inheritance. If you have the time, why don't? Sui Qing's expression changed as she spoke. She waved her hand and helplessly said, I forgot that you still have a lot of things to do. Sorry, just pretend I didn't say anything. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Thank you so much for immediately remembering that I still have a lot of things to do. Well, even so, if I have the time, I will think of a way to help. If I have the time. Sui Qing nodded slightly. Thank you for the trouble. Many things. Many things. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He really had a lot of things to do that needed to be done. If it was a normal person, they would have gone bald by now. How are the others? Have they completed the origin baptism? Yes, you are the last to start and also the last to finish. Because there are fewer people this time, the energy of the territory can be increased to the maximum. The speed of the origin baptism is also increased by several times, including the inheritance awakening. So it can be completed very quickly. Sui Qing turned around and pointed to the other side of the territory. There are a total of 8 new inheritors. Other than them, there are also some who have the potential to become inheritors. However, their power is not compatible with the venerable gods, so they did not become inheritors. Yun Nuoxing looked towards the direction she was pointing at. There were 6 pillars shining with a bright and moving light. The surging energy revolved around the pillars, forming a spiral that kept spinning upwards. He recognized the aura of this group of people. It would be better to say that the main event was basically the few of them. Siyu, Qing Huang, Jing Yuanji, Hui, Qing Jun, Xing Lv, including Shui Yan at the side. What about the last one? There's one more at the back. Sui Qing tugged on his shoulder and made him turn around. About a few thousand meters away, there was a pillar of ice and snow that was blowing a transparent and cold ice storm. The ice and frost aura swept through the area, and although it couldn't affect them directly from a distance, they couldn't help but shiver when they looked at it. It was as if they were in the middle of an ice and snow storm in an instant, and were being attacked by ice and snow from all directions. Is that Shuang Shuang? Yun Nuoxing understood the moment he saw the ice storm. He sensed it carefully and found that it was indeed her. Yes, the inheritor is the power of the ice venerable god. Yun Nuoxing counted with his fingers. 13 people, one more than expected at the beginning. It should be a good result. Indeed, but this result is also within our expectations. Sui Qing nodded slightly. Most of them came from the realm of the gods. They have been influenced by you too much and have already established their foundations. They have also walked very far on the path of nature. Or perhaps they have special bodies, so this result is not surprising. Her blue eyes looked at the ice storm. After a while, Sui Qing frowned slightly. We don't have the inheritor of the ice venerable god among us. The corresponding gods of Siyu and Qing Huang also did not leave behind any inheritors. There is no one who can guide them. This is troublesome. Wait a minute, let me take a closer look. She looked around and confirmed for a while. She could not help but sigh. It seems that among the awakened inheritors this time, other than Ji Shuyan and Xing Lv, there are no other inheritors who can help guide them. They are all in the other 16 positions that are missing? Yun Nuoxing tilted his head. The number of second-generation inheritors is exactly 147, 146? No, there were originally 149 second-generation inheritors. Excluding the god of destruction and the god of creation, there were 145 inheritors in total. There were 4 gods and 2 inheritors. Before we were hurriedly sent into the soul-subduing ring by the gods, 18 inheritors had already fallen. Now there are 131 inheritors left. There is no duplicate origin power. In other words, including the new 11 inheritors. Well, it was not filled up yet. It was probably not filled up. Sui Qing's expression was still calm and dull, but Yun Nuoxing seemed to be barely able to see the hatred and anger that could burn the entire starry sky from her pair of blue starry eyes. It was rare to see her reveal other emotions when mentioning the deceased inheritor. He almost forgot. He almost forgot because of the positive and optimistic attitude that they still maintained. Everyone came to this era with hatred on their back. They were forced to abandon everything they had in the past and came here with a mission. The monstrous anger and hatred that they left behind would not disappear with the passing of time. They would never be able to calm down. It was the anger and hatred that could not be vented in the past. It had been accumulating for almost 20 eras, and it was getting deeper and deeper. Chapter 1952. For the second-generation inheritors who had accumulated hatred and anger for almost 20 eras, it was a pain that tore the era and reality apart. It was even more unforgettable than killing themselves. He had once mocked himself in the 139th era, and perhaps the same words could be used to describe Suifeng and the other second-generation inheritors. They once had a big happy family and were of the same origin. They had been through many hardships, but they never gave up. As long as the void did not explode, they could still hold on. Until one day they received an unlimited mission from their goddess, and everything changed. That was the last time they came into contact with reality. They didn't have time to say goodbye, didn't have time to say a few words, and didn't have time to do anything. That moment of parting was eternal. When they opened their eyes again, they were isolated in a small box, waiting for the end that seemed like it would never come. They allowed time to pass by without stopping. Being isolated in the small box, they would never know what was happening outside. Until one day they were released from the small box and once again saw the world in front of them. Everything had become unfamiliar. The earth-shattering changes were the ironclad proof that the reality they were familiar with was far away. Everything had changed. However, nothing seemed to have changed. They were still fighting on the front lines of order. It was just that they no longer had the familiar faces of their big family. Only their group of 131 remained, cold and merciless. He could understand this feeling. After all, he was a guy who had reincarnated for who knows how many lifetimes. He repeatedly jumped on the path of reincarnation and wandered around as if it was his own backyard. He was used to dying and dying. He was also used to the passage of time and witnessed the world being burned, torn, and destroyed. He continued on this path for eternity without stopping. No matter how many people he had known, whether they were deep friends or ordinary acquaintances. No matter what, when time passed, he would be the only one left. He would be like an ancient soul drifting away from the world, carrying the obsession that had settled down for dozens of eras. Perhaps there was even more. That was why he could understand. That was why he did not know what to say. That was why he did not say anything. He did not mention anything about it. He did not have the habit of tearing the scars of others. Oh, if it was the scars of his enemies, could he tear them with a knife? Don't worry. Even if his hand trembled, he would just tear a little bit more. It would not affect him. At most, he would tear the path of reincarnation. It was not a big problem. However, it didn't seem appropriate to ignite the hatred and anger in her heart, just like that, because it wasn't the right time yet. If he ignited it now, it would only waste his strength. Although he could understand that she might not be able to control her emotions, it would be better to suppress it for a while. Thinking of this, he subconsciously reached out his hand and pressed on Sui Qing's head. All four of them were stunned. Yun Nuoxing was dumbfounded. He was used to pressing on his little girl's head. Coincidentally, he was also distracted. Looking at Sui Qing's slightly widened eyes, he guessed that she was also a little silly. Then he quickly raised his hand again and patted her shoulder. Now is not the time to release that energy. Hold it in for a while. There will be a chance to say it. When the time comes, shout all the words that have been accumulated for 20 eras to the void. Use the energy torrent to shout it out to the entire void. Sui Qing slightly raised her head and looked at him. She looked at his colorful eyes, which reflected countless things in the world. She had seen the endless scenes of madness and mania in those eyes. At this time, it was just a pair of beautiful eyes. They were very calm and had accumulated everything in the deepest part of their heart. It was because this was not the best time. Whether it was emotional transfer or venting anger at the right time, releasing all the accumulated negative emotions at that time seemed to be the best way to control oneself. She seemed to understand that this was the reason why he often lost control in battle. She raised her hand and patted her hair. Suddenly she said, "Have you listed me as your target?" "Ah no. That's just my hand trembling." Yun Nuoxing forced a smile and scratched his cheek. When I see someone showing that kind of expression, I can't help but want to say or do something. Probably because I know the consequences of being overwhelmed by these emotions, just like me. But I'm self-controlling, self-releasing, and self-losing control, so I don't think there's anything. I've said too much. Sui Qing blinked her blue starry eyes and saw his embarrassed face. She tilted her head and said indifferently, "There are too many people in your family. If I get involved, won't there be a quarrel?" "So, I really didn't mean that." My hand just trembled. Yun Nuoxing was so anxious that he was jumping and sweating. Little Star's habit is to always press on other people's heads when talking about this kind of topic. She always looks at others with a helpless look like an adult looking at a child. "Little angel," said at the side. Yun Nuoxing was speechless. He didn't know what kind of bad habit it was. Yes, he didn't know. It wasn't that he didn't. Little angel saw that he was almost confused by his own psychological confrontation, so she turned to look at Sui Qing. "Our family is very lively. Our family is quite harmonious. Basically, we don't quarrel. If we quarrel, it's only because some idiot is playing himself to death and can't stand it. Basically, we're the ones who focus fire on him, although we can't persuade him in the end. It just so happens that we can't hold this idiot down either. Do you want to give us a hand?" "Yun Nuoxing, why are all the conversations today so high-pitched? Can you stop talking about topics that make my liver tremble? If there's nothing, please treat me as a non-existent invisible person." "Yes, I won't care. It's better to say that you must do so." Sui Qing glanced at his tangled, and even more tangled face and looked away. "It's just a joke. Don't take it seriously." Yun Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief and patted his chest. "Let's talk about something else. By the way, since the matter of the inheritor is settled, let's deal with another equally important matter first. I guess I'll need all of you to come to the observer's dimension." Sui Qing immediately understood when he mentioned the importance of the matter. "The Fortress of Origin. Yes, it's done long ago. After all, I took a look at it before I fell asleep. It would only take a year to put it back together. But I didn't expect that I would lie down for 20 years. Yun Nuoxing waved his hand and pulled the two girls towards the gate of the Fortress of Origin. "You two can deal with the remaining matters first. See you later." Sui Qing nodded and watched him leave before she turned and walked towards the center of the domain. The size and area of the Fortress of Origin were much larger than he had expected. To pull it out of the observer's dimension, he had to find a safer place. To put it simply, it was a huge storm, and it would not stop there. It would also unleash its destructive power in all directions. At least, that was the case before it was pinned down. After all, it was pieced together after 20 eras, and it had to roar a few times to express its emotions. It had been roaring for almost 20 years, and it was lucky that the conceptual space was tough enough not to be blown away by the wind. There was a lot of stuff near the center of the observer's dimension. Although he felt that hanging the Fortress of Origin out like this would not necessarily blow away the creation sanctum and the sanctum of creation, it was better to throw it out just in case. He was too lazy to clean it up. The pale golden ball of light floated 1,000 miles ahead. The surging radiance drew thousands of very obvious light traces within it, as if streams of light were rushing past. When it moved, it caused the space and the sea of energy here to resonate. The space above was distorted into a vortex and then a funnel, collapsing towards it. The sea of energy below was pulled up by a powerful gravitational force, arching a mountain peak above the sea. Does this thing need a huge amount of energy to manifest? He did not expect such a movement at all. He thought that it was just a normal thing to take out, and did not know where the energy was used. Observing the movement in the conceptual dimension, he thought that it might take some time to move the colossal thing out. He still had not seen what the Fortress of Origin looked like. After all, the storm it roared was still blocking his view. He turned to look at the little angel and Yuankong. "Is there anything wrong with your body?" "Everything is normal." Yuankong raised her hand and replied. "The brand of origin has fused with the origin of creation. Now, even if we let them come into contact with order, there will be no adverse effect. It seems that it can even accelerate our transformation into order beings. The first part was fine, but as for the transformation after, he was a little confused. As the origin of creation and the essence of the abyssal death shroud, how should he twist it so that it could safely become order without affecting them? He had not figured out the answer to this question. But he knew that he could not figure out the answer by thinking. He had to try it himself to know what the result would be. Then came the most serious problem. There were probably only 2 abyssal death shroud beings in the entire void. Where could he find a safer way to research or something to choose one of the 2? He felt that it would not work. This idea was a little shameful. This was not the same thing as dying and coming back to life. When it came to the alteration of the origin of creation and the origin of creation, it would be a small matter if he died if he did not handle it well. As a result, he could only hang in the spiritual temple without a way to resurrect. If the alteration of the origin of creation and the origin of creation were to affect the soul, it would be difficult to survive if the alteration of the origin of creation and the soul did not match. Well, it might be more convenient to use the origin heavenly God's explanation. For example, let's say his soul is in the shape of a ball, and the root of his soul imprinted in the spiritual temple is a ball. Now, he wants to transform into a cube, but he fails. He is stuck in the middle, turning from a ball into a gourd. Because the transformation is incomplete, if he accidentally dies in the middle, the fragments left behind after his death will be collected by the spiritual temple. But the collected fragments won't be able to determine what he has become. Because he is now a gourd, it won't be able to recognize him, and he will be gone. He can only hang there, unable to be resurrected, unless he dies completely. For example, during the 100 billion years he has been dead, the spiritual temple didn't even collect the fragments, and directly returned to his original form, which costs a lot of time. That's what it meant. To be more precise, the origin of creation and the origin of creation had an abnormality due to an unsmooth transformation. The spiritual temple was unable to recognize that it was clearly the same individual, but the soul imprint was in 2 different states. Therefore, it was impossible to resurrect the person from the soul imprint. The transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation also had its degree of change and speed. Generally speaking, it would not immediately affect the soul, or else the failure rate would be equal to the death rate. Generally speaking, after the transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation, it would take some time before the transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation began to slowly adjust the body, including the soul. This could be considered a relatively slow transformation, a subtle process. But for the transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation, this was something that could not be avoided. This was a huge and violent transformation. In 1 second, the origin of creation and the origin of creation would tremble, and in the next, the soul would tremble as well. Basically, it happened simultaneously, which was very dangerous. For the time being, there was a way to save it, but the process was not too wonderful. It was not too wonderful for both the person being saved and the person being saved. It was best not to experience such an unnecessary experience. Just like death, although one could be resurrected, who would like to die for no reason? What are you thinking about? The little angel bent down with her hands behind her back and tilted her head to look at him. She looked straight into his colorful eyes. Yun Nuoshing came back to his senses and habitually reached out to rub her long silver hair. I'm thinking about your problem. I'm trying to think of a perfect solution, but I don't have any good ideas for the time being. I'm a little anxious. The little angel stroked his face gently. Is there a rescue plan? Yes, Yun Nuoshing answered without hesitation. Then it's fine. She smiled and wrapped him with her white wings. As long as there is a way, it's fine. We still have time. It's not the time to change the origin of creation and the origin of creation, so there's no need to be so anxious. Yun Nuoshing was silent. That's true. Time, the existence of this thing is to constantly push people forward. Unknowingly, it will push everyone to the predetermined position. No matter if they are prepared or not, no one can escape. Big idiot, it seems like something is going to fall. Yuan Kong, who had been running around the area, hurried back and grabbed his hand. He pointed his finger at the sky and made both of them turn their eyes. A huge phantom appeared in the sky. It was blurry and ethereal like a mirage. It was so transparent that it seemed like it could melt into the air. There were various colors of origin energy flowing around its edges and inside. It looked like a huge building that was still in a state of construction. Only the framework was more obvious. With just the framework alone, one could barely see its general appearance. But what was more shocking was that the appearance of the Fortress of Origin was a little different from what he had imagined. He had thought that the Fortress of Origin was either a sphere or some kind of remnant building filled with pillars. But now it seemed a little different. And the structure was so messy. He did not know how to describe it, nor did he know which order to describe it. The huge object hovering in the sky covered a much larger area than he had imagined. He had deliberately thrown the world core of order 1,000 miles away to prevent the oversized object from falling on his face like a galaxy. But reality proved that he had underestimated the size of the object, as well as the extent of the madness of the gods of Origin's creation. They had to retreat quite a distance before they could see the whole thing. Taking it apart into 2 or 3 parts, the entire Fortress of Origin was at least 70 to 80,000 miles in diameter. The main part was a pile. God damn it, he did not know what that thing was. It looked like a conch that looked like an awl. Its overall height was about 50,000 miles and was equally divided into upper and lower parts. The lower part was a straight pillar with a slightly tapered bottom. The entire pillar was equipped with a spiral that kept shrinking from top to bottom like a pendant, and the bottom part was also covered with about 30 similarly shrunken rings. As for the upper half, if he was not mistaken, it was a pyramid with a side length of more than 30,000 miles. At the top of the pyramid, there was an energy mark that was about the size of the entire pyramid in the surrounding space. It was unknown what it looked like. Currently, there was not enough energy, so the mark was quite blurry and could not be seen clearly. This included the 4 sides of the pyramid. The surface looked smooth, but there seemed to be some prints that could barely be seen. It was probably because there was not enough energy to manifest it. That was the main part, and the rest were the parts around it. Those were 32 tall and large rhombus-shaped crystals that resembled pillars. The width was 1/3 of the pyramid's upper part, but the height was the same. 16 of them were arranged in an inner circle and another 16 in an outer circle, with the inner circle circling the center in a clockwise direction while the outer circle was the other way around. At present, there was only a transparent frame and no color could be seen. But if one thought about it carefully, they should be mixed with origin energy, which was why they should be colorful. Those 2 parts combined to form an entire fortress. Well, it certainly looked like a fortress with a strict defense. In short, it was a huge lump that suddenly rushed into one's eyes. Aside from expressing that they did not understand but were deeply shocked, they could not think of anything else. Clang. With a quaking sound, the space trembled. The 2 circles of 32 tall and large rhombus-shaped crystals in the Fortress of Origin now had 3 additional rings hanging on them as if additional accessories had just been fastened on. Moreover, the rings in the 2 parts were different as well. The inner ring was smaller and obediently fixed at the top, middle, and bottom positions, while the rings hanging on the 16 rhombus-shaped crystals in the outer circle were obviously much larger and were circling them up, down, left, and right. It was also thanks to the outer rings that the diameter of the entire Fortress of Origin had increased by another 10,000 miles. Now, the entire Fortress of Origin was estimated to be 100,000 miles in diameter. If there was a discrepancy, it would be a little bigger. He believed that the heavenly god of Origin and the others would definitely like to make things bigger. By the way, it was only a rough outline at the moment since it had not fully manifested. When it did, he had a feeling that there would be some weird things added. It was obvious from the dozens of hula hoops that suddenly appeared. The heavenly god of Origin and the others probably liked to place additional accessories as normal parts. Moreover, apart from the main body, inner ring, and outer ring, there was still a large portion of empty space in the Fortress of Origin. He had a feeling that something could be stuffed in those places. At least a few thousand staffs of Origin, or a bunch of energy towers would do. Wow! This thing looks so majestic no matter when you look at it. It really is a special model of the Fortress of Origin. Its size is one size bigger, and a normal Fortress of Origin would not have those 32 things outside. The exclamations and exclamations behind them made Yun Nuoshing and the others turn around to see Brother Lei, Sui Feng, and the others walking towards them. They could not help but exclaim as they looked up at the area that was even larger than when it was dismantled into parts. But, this thing doesn't seem to be complete? Sui Feng scratched his head. It's translucent, and the main body is missing something. I remember that there's a hole near the belly where the Staff of Creation was placed, and I remember that there's more than 32 things, and there's something. Did I forget? Yun Nuoshing rolled his eyes and said that it was not fully manifested. It's still being taken out of the conceptual space. It's not fully manifested yet. Let's wait a few more minutes. He glanced at the sea of energy that was being rapidly mobilized, and his face twitched. Why does it require such a huge amount of energy to manifest? The sea of energy might need to use 1/10 of its energy. Is this a repair fee? Xiaoshe thought for a while and suddenly remembered. You forgot to recharge the conceptual space. After sleeping for 20 years, the energy in the conceptual space had long been used up when repairing the Fortress of Origin. If the object is only stored in the conceptual space, there's no need to recharge the energy used up. If you want to bring it to another place outside the conceptual space, you'll have to recharge the energy used up. This is what Her Eminence said. It seems to be an emergency solution in the conceptual space. It can allow one to endlessly overdraw energy when one is locked in a defensive battle. I'll take out a bunch of high-energy consuming creations right in front of you and bombard them with cannon after cannon. The lockdown will be for naught, and you'll die from anger. These are Her Eminence's words. Yun Nuoshing was speechless. Alright, it was another one of the inhumane arrangements of the heavenly god of Origin and the others. This method of dealing with things must have been very useful when they were forced into the concept space to encircle and annihilate him. So, now that I have to find out that the energy expended was to compensate for the energy used to repair the Fortress of Origin when he fainted, that's understandable. As the degree of manifestation increased, the Fortress of Origin went through another 3 or 4 changes. There were some changes on the main body, but there were also considerable changes on the whole. For example, there were 8 huge energy balls around the top and bottom of the main body. Judging from the surging energy of the 16 energy balls, even before they manifested, they were definitely used to open the head of chaos. There was also a bunch of patterns and markings that slowly manifested. They belonged to some unknown heavenly god of Origin. As for their effects, they were either used to maximize attack or defense. Near the bottom of the pyramid, there was a hole about 1,000 miles in diameter at the center. Compared to the size of the pyramid itself, the hole was really inconspicuous. That's where the Staff of Creation is placed, Sui Feng said, pointing at the newly formed hole. I don't remember the Staff of Creation having such a big diameter, right? Yun Nuoshing gestured at the hole. He remembered that the staff of creation was only 20 to 30,000 feet in diameter. As he spoke, he was about to take out the staff of creation to test it out when he suddenly froze. The cores of the staff of creation and the staff of origin were still being dismantled. He had to find some time to study them and put them back together. Oh, that's something Her Eminence deliberately did to expand the attack range. It's said that when the time comes, a torrent of energy will spread out in a fan-shaped attack range. There will also be a bunch of things placed in that area that will multiply the power of the staff of creation. Everyone was speechless. She expanded the attack range because she was afraid that she would miss? Yun Nuoshing understood and waved his hand. Precision? Precision? What precision? I'm going to flatten the entire void with an indiscriminate energy bombardment. There will be no problem of missing the target if the bombardment covers the entire area in one shot. You won't even be able to escape. Everyone was speechless. This guy definitely has a lot in common with Her Eminence when they're together. In summary, the power of origin. Chaos still needs to be adjusted. I've just figured out a new form of energy, so I'll try to multiply the power and range of origin. Chaos by 1,000,000. When the time comes, I'll definitely tear the underworld into pieces. After another 2 or 3 hits, I'll wipe out all the high-level primeval and leave 1 or 2 peak-level ones behind. Oh, Sin Word will kill one with 1 slash and slowly play with the remaining one. I'll smash origin. Chaos into source origin again and again. Everyone was speechless. When the time comes, everyone will sink into source origin. Before they can swim back, they'll be pushed back by a wave. Finally, they'll drown in source origin. Yun Nuoshing looked at the fort of origin and suddenly clapped his hands excitedly. A fortress of origin, this thing can be used as an extra-large energy node. If I use it, I can increase the attack power of every origin, primal chaos, by 3 to 5 levels. The final origin, primal chaos, should be able to increase the attack power by several times. Everyone was speechless. Feng Ling, be a human. Our family members won't be able to fight if you continue like this. Chapter 1953. Everyone huddled together to discuss whether the observer's origin. Chaos would break the formation of his own people first before destroying the realm of order, or would it destroy the people of the underworld first? This was a difficult question to answer. They all felt that the energy identification was not very strong. Even though the energy identification of the sinful word had been arranged, but they just felt that it was not very strong. Anyone who had directly faced the power of the observer's origin, Chaos would have the illusion that they would be pushed to the bottom of the sea at any time. It was an energy tsunami that exploded in the void, enough to destroy everything within sight, and anything that could not be killed would be pushed to the bottom of the sea. Now that the observer had mastered a new form of energy, it would probably pierce through the seabed and bury them underground. Well, they were talking about being pushed into the origin of chaos. The origin of chaos was much more violent than the void, and any opening in that place would cause earth-shattering tremors. They would not fear the explosive power of the origin of chaos if they were well prepared, but if they were to leave the realm of order, their formation would definitely fall apart and they would not be able to hold their ground in the storm. The energy identification did not fear damage, but the gale could still blow people away. In the end, the energy identification was not completely immune, especially when the observer was constantly increasing his power during a fight, and they were afraid that the energy identification would not be of much use when his power was at its peak. As the topic continued, the Fortress of Origin hummed with a surging energy texture, announcing the completion of its manifestation. It also interrupted everyone's discussion and caused everyone to turn their eyes away. It's finally done. Yun Nuoshing turned to look at the Fortress of Origin. The fully manifested Fortress of Origin did not have anything extra compared to before. It was probably fixed after the placement of the staff of creation was done, and the rest was just adding various things that they did not understand but felt useful and powerful, such as the marks of origin and certain things that might exist inside. In short, there should not be anything extra. The fully revealed fortress of origin was a deep silver blue in color. It had a heavy metallic texture, and its surface was engraved with many indescribable origin imprints. They were all weaved by origin energy, and the rhombus-shaped crystals and energy balls around it were also of the same color. Even the huge, gorgeous, incomprehensible, and shocking pattern hanging above it was of the same color. That is the divine pattern of the continent of origin drawn by the gods together. It is a pattern similar to a divine pattern and is also one of the cores of the fortress of origin's realm of origin. Suifeng explained when he saw Maple studying the huge pattern. Yun Nuoxing was stunned. One of the cores? How many are there in total? Altogether. Anyway, you just have to count all the cores in the fortress of origin. As long as they aren't completely destroyed, the domain won't collapse. If you don't destroy the core inside, you won't be able to destroy the core on the top. If you want to destroy the order domain alone, you might as well destroy the entire fortress of origin. That's much more straightforward. Suifeng pointed at the 2 rings of rhombus-shaped crystals. The 32 crystals are also used for attack and defense. The outer ring's defense is normal, while the inner ring's attack and defense have weak concept-level power. Well, I don't know much about the rest. I don't know much about the inside of the fortress of origin. What about the 16 orbs above and below? Yun Nuoxing pointed at the 16 planet-sized energy orbs. Anyway, they are used for attack and defense. As for the specifics, Suifeng answered with difficulty. Seeing Maple's helpless expression, he scratched his head and turned to his sister and the others. Sis, we might have to study the fortress of origin for the time being. Putting together all the things the gods have explained to us about the fortress of origin isn't even a tenth of its functions. Xiaoshi turned to Feng Ling. Perhaps Feng Ling can trigger something we can't touch. Everyone turned to look at the observer, who pointed at himself blankly. Theoretically speaking, it's very likely. Suifeng nodded in agreement. Yun Nuoxing stared at her with wide eyes, but before he could say anything, Xiaoshi grabbed his hand and led him to the fortress of origin. Let's go. It shouldn't take too much time. Yun Nuoxing's face darkened. He couldn't help but look up at the sky and mumble, "Why me again? Why me again? Why always me? No, it hasn't been confirmed yet. Anyway, it's just a walk around. I might not even have anything to do with it." Everyone was speechless. Well, now that he said it himself, something was definitely going to happen. Speaking of which, how do we enter this place? Yun Nuoxing looked at the main body of the fortress of origin, but he couldn't find the entrance no matter how hard he looked. His attention was drawn to the muzzle of the staff of creation, but there was a red and black light flashing from the entrance. Yes, it was the light of the energy of destruction. It was definitely her energy of destruction. They couldn't possibly enter from that place, could they? Well, theoretically speaking, the muzzle of the cannon could also enter the interior of the fortress. After all, the entrance was 1,000 miles in diameter, so it shouldn't be a problem for a person to pass through. However, the flashing light made everyone break out in cold sweat, and they all wanted to avoid it. You'll know when you get there. Actually, you can see the entrance just by looking at the size of the main body. Suifeng said as he floated in front. He agreed with Suifeng. The main body of the fortress of origin was 50,000 miles tall, and the entrance for a person to pass through was at most 2 meters. Even if the entrance was opened up in a special area, it would only be 1,000 feet in length, width, and height. It was probably enough to fit in the main body of the fortress, and it was hard to see if one didn't get closer. When he got closer, he realized that he could no longer see the fortress of origin clearly. In front of him was another piece of land. The pyramid was like a smooth landslide. When the bottom of the pyramid fell, he saw that there was actually a large platform outside. Looking from the outside, the platform didn't seem to be very big, and it didn't seem to be very big. Yuan Kong looked up at the two pieces of silver-blue land that stretched horizontally and diagonally upward, and couldn't help but mutter, "This thing is really big. Does the heavenly god of origin like to make things this big?" Well, actually, the products of the 8 elemental realm are all very big. Well, this thing isn't particularly big. Sui Feng scratched his head and looked at Feng carefully. Doesn't your brother-in-law often make things that are tens of millions of miles in diameter, or hundreds of millions of miles in diameter? The space in the creation sanctum is stuffed with a huge explosive with a diameter of tens of billions of light years. You said that those things are explosives and they're just energy. Who would go look at them for no reason? But this is a building. It's different. Yuan Kong shook his head and looked at the fortress of origin. He couldn't help but mutter, with such a big building, I think you'll only get lost if you go in. If you don't use spatial teleportation, you won't be able to get out in 2 or 3 years. Yeah, they also thought that this was very likely to happen. But it was impossible to get out of such a big building without using spatial teleportation. God knows how long it would take to get out if they didn't use spatial teleportation. There was nothing on the platform at the base. Sui Feng led them all the way forward. When they came to the foot of the base, they saw a real door. It was a door about 10,000 feet in length and height. If they didn't get close enough, they wouldn't even see it. This should be a passage that went straight into the main body of the fortress. The walls, ceiling, and floor of the passage were full of markings and patterns drawn with origin energy and origin law, although they didn't know what they were for. These. Yun Nuoxing leaned on the wall and looked for a while. She rubbed her hand for a while and nodded. It's used to help gather energy. It can accelerate the gathering of energy by several times. Follow these patterns and you'll find the place where the energy is gathered. Everyone was shocked. Even Sui Feng scratched his head. But I've never seen these things before. The fortress of origin that my teacher showed me was a special type of fortress of origin. I've never seen one with so many patterns engraved on the sky and on the ground. Yun Nuoxing thought for a moment, then clapped his hands and replied, Isn't it just released from the concept space and gasping for breath? The concept space probably only overdrew the energy to put it back together and didn't replenish it with energy. It has been dismantled for more than 20 eras. Why don't you allow it to quickly replenish its energy after putting it back together? Besides, the core energy core hasn't been installed yet, right? Then everyone realized that it was in a state of energy exhaustion. The Fortress of Origin felt that this was a moment of life and death, and was playing with the life and death energy. Life energy? Everyone was stunned. Even Yun Nuoxing himself reacted half a beat later after he finished speaking. He suddenly turned his head to look outside, and immediately hugged his head with both hands and let out a tragic scream. My sea of energy! How could half of it be drained in one breath? Everyone was speechless. The sea of energy was probably in danger. It was definitely going to be drained dry. The next batch of energy sources hadn't been produced yet. If it was drained dry, the observer space would have no energy to use in a short time. Oh, there wasn't that much energy left. Stop. Stop. Stop right now, you bastard. If you keep this up, I'll have to wait for a long time for energy to gather again, you bastard. A certain observer was pounding on the wall and pounding on the floor while bawling her eyes out. She was crying so hard that her beautiful face was all messed up, making her look like a little girl. Well, as I said last time, a little girl crying and pounding on the wall was definitely a problem. See, the problem was here, and it was a big problem. Alright, Brother Feng. As for energy, the new won't come without the old. Just bear with it for a while and there will be more. Sui Feng patted his shoulder and looked at the rapidly declining sea of energy. His face twitched, and he could not help but smile bitterly. Let me tell you another piece of bad news. The 32 crystals and the 16 balls above and below are all waiting to be recharged. Yun Nuoshing fainted before she could catch her breath. Everyone was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. That was great. The concept class rule fragments that were constantly replenished by over 2 million permanent stations could be converted into energy. Moreover, the Sea of Energy's unique structure and core structure meant that its rate of energy gathering should have reached a terrifying level, but it was still drained clean by the mountain-like fortress of origin. Now there was only 1/5 of its energy left. They couldn't even hear the Sea of Energy churning. No one knew if the fortress of origin had heard the mournful cries of an observer, but when there was only 1/5 of the Sea of Energy left, it suddenly stopped its action of slamming into the Sea of Energy and began slamming energy into the void. Whoa! What's happening in the observer space? A huge energy vortex has been observed at Node 0. Lord Feng, the vortex is getting bigger. Damn it, it's already spread to the realm of order. The energy is plummeting. It's not picky. It drained the abyssal death mist spawn dry. The entire void has been taken over by it. Everyone was speechless. Now that the cries had reached the outside world, it was too much to say that it wasn't picky. It was so hungry that it couldn't be picky. Yun Nuoshing abruptly bounced up and smashed her head against the wall, cursing, "Go to the void and origin and draw energy. The void and this place can't withstand your torment, damn it." Lord Feng, what's going on over there? Oh, the energy vortex is shrinking and the energy loss is decreasing. It's fine. Hurry up and replenish the realm of order. Lord Feng, please continue with your work. The crisis is over, everything is fine over here. Everyone was speechless. It seemed that the fortress of origin had listened to the observer's words and really stopped when it was told to. Yun Nuoshing looked weary and worried, squatting on the ground and leaning against the wall, her face ashen. This thing consumes a lot of energy. Where can we find a core to supply it with energy? I don't even know if the energy source can withstand this level of gluttony. It's not that bad. Suifeng laughed dryly. It's mainly because it has just been pieced together and is in a state of energy exhaustion. That's why it needs to draw a lot of energy at once. When it's fully charged, that energy source is enough to be used as an energy core. After all, it can carry a lot of energy by itself and can draw energy from the environment on its own. It's not entirely powered by an energy core, so this is for insurance. In any case, let's keep moving forward. In the second half of the tunnel, Observer Lu was dragged along by the little angel and Yuan Kong. His face was pale, and he kept muttering hundreds of years. Sea of energy, depletion, energy source is not strong enough, full energy, tens of millions of energy source worlds, full energy, and other words that made everyone's liver tremble. This was the fear of insufficient energy after the fear of insufficient firepower. There was no light in the passage itself, and it was all thanks to the patterns carved on the four sides. It was probably because of the energy exhaustion. Everyone stared at the patterns as they kept moving forward. After walking for quite a distance, they finally saw something else in the passage. It was not that they had arrived at a place, but a fork. In just 100 meters there were 4 to 5 forks. It was like a maze. If not for Suifeng and the others who were more familiar with the fortress of origin, there was no telling how long they would have to go around. It's like a maze, Yuan Kong could not help but say. It's actually not that complicated. Suifeng quickly shook his head. In fact, the internal structure is simple. It's just that it's big. The 5 forks you see will not lead to any other forks before reaching the hall at the end of each path. The path that diverges from that hall is just for the convenience of going to other halls. So, the interior of the Fortress of Origin is one hall after another? Yuan Kong seemed to understand. That's right. It's individual halls. Do you remember what I said before? The fortress of origin can continue to function even if it disintegrates. Each hall has an independent energy core. That's it. Suifeng continued to walk along the path ahead, not intending to explore the forks. Go straight ahead and you'll reach the core of the fortress of origin. There should be a portal in the fortress of origin, right at the entrance. It's just that, well, it doesn't have enough energy now. The emergency energy replenishment might not even be enough to fill the gaps between our teeth, and some of the energy has been used in more important places. Portals, which are convenient for people to come and go, are dispensable for now. Now we can leave a spatial beacon after going there once to fix the teleportation. Now, without a spatial beacon, we don't teleport directly but only use short-distance teleportation and walking because we're worried that the surging energy in the fortress of origin would throw us into some weird place. Yuan Kong was startled. Is this some kind of defense? Suifeng froze for a moment before turning his head with a dry smile. Occasionally, there would be fights inside the fortress of origin. Internal defense, right? Just leave a part of the defense to use. Even if it was a defense that could only be used when the chaos conceptual entity and other ghostly things rushed into the fortress of origin and went on a killing spree. Still, from what she understood now, something similar might have happened in the past, and quite a few times. Yun Nuoshing suddenly came back to her senses after hearing Suifeng's words. She quickly said, I just remembered something. These things were left for you guys, right? Why are you dragging me along? Am I right? The heirs were silent for a moment before Brother Lei coughed and could not help but say, I believe that when Her Eminence left these things behind, they must have left a set of insurance plans based on their understanding of us and their guesses about what might happen. As for that plan, well, it was a little early since the fuse itself was just a shadow at that time. So, that's what I mean. Everyone turned to look at a certain executor, who was startled and his face twitched. That's great. Now all the insurance plans have been activated, right? Everyone smiled bitterly. After all, they had encountered all kinds of terrible things that pushed their previous plans into the abyss. So, they had no choice but to activate all their insurance plans. In the end, they had caught a certain executor and started tormenting him. Wait. Little Hour suddenly spoke, drawing everyone's attention. She turned to look at the fork and said flatly, There's no point in crowding. We still need to analyze the fortress of origin. Let's split up. Without Her Eminence's guidance, we can only try to understand the fortress on our own. Everyone nodded without hesitation and ran towards the other passages, leaving the group to continue moving towards the core of the fortress of origin. Although they knew that there was only one straight path in the passage, they still felt like they were walking through a maze in such a spacious and deep place. That kind of large-scale maze seemed to be able to devour all intruders. Suifeng looked ahead and suddenly said, We're almost there. Brother Maple, pull them back. The space behind the door is very dangerous for beings of order. Although almost 2/3 of them have been converted to order and have the brand of the origin, but it's never wrong to be careful. Yun Nuoshing instinctively reached out, only to be tightly bound by a pair of wings. Her left hand was also held tightly by Yuan Kong, so she could only raise her right hand from the pile of feathers and give a thumbs up. Let's go. After walking a dozen steps forward, some abnormal light spots suddenly appeared in the air, densely scattered in all directions. It was as if he was looking directly at the sun through the grass, watching the sunlight directly enter his eyes. It was also as if there were mirrors randomly arranged in the distance, reflecting the sunlight from all directions into his eyes. Even if he knew what might be happening, he could not understand what exactly was happening. From the beginning, he did not feel any movement as if it was happening, and there was no need for any reason or reason. After all, it was something that the heavenly God of origin and the others made, so it was only natural that it would happen. After the dazzling light faded, the light began to reshape, filling the vision with colorful lights. The space was occupied by a compact arrangement of diamond-shaped patterns, a bit like Huey's primeval domain. Each diamond-shaped pattern looked like a crystal, and as the background in the distance they were just maps with different colors, as if they were reflected by the light. A little closer, he could see a large number of diamond-shaped structures pieced together by different numbers of them, moving irregularly around the entire space. He stared at them for a while and felt that they were probably decorations for the background, probably. This was a warm-toned space, with a faint gradient of white and orange. Looking at it, it was as if he could see as far as he could, but when he really looked at the farthest, he could not see the end of it at all. They were standing on the only platform in this space. The brightly colored platform was too eye-catching and could be easily distinguished from this space. It also looked like a light curtain laid flat on the ground, extending to the end of the line of sight. As for the space around them, there was nothing. Other than the diamond-shaped map in the distance and the large pile of rotating structures, this place was really empty. After checking the condition of the little angel and Yuankong, Yun Nuoxing found that they were not affected. Only then did she look at the space. There seems to be some lingering thoughts in the core. Is there anything else? Yes, wait a moment. I remember the core looks like this. Suifeng squatted on the ground and pressed his hand into the ground. His expression kept changing as if he was trying to dig something out of the ground. After a while, he slowly pulled his hand out and said, "It's done." The space before them flickered, turning from illusory and transparent to solid. It seemed to have been hidden in front of them from the beginning, but now it was revealed. It was the colorful spherical framework with 12 rings around it. It looked like an asteroid. Oh, this thing is really a core. Yun Nuoxing could not help but roll her eyes. This was the thing that was put together in the beginning. At that time, she did not see the core in the center. Now, she still did not see the core in the center. The center of the spherical framework was very conspicuous. She measured it with her eyes and felt that it should be able to fit an energy source into it. Sure enough, the core is gone. Suifeng scratched his head and sighed. I'm afraid the core has been dug out by those bastards. But they deliberately dismantled the fortress of origin inside and out, and dug out the core. Yun Nuoxing thought carefully about what they did. They stole the energy rods and twisted them into something that could provide energy for chaos. I think there should be a corresponding value. After all, they took away the energy rods. Maybe they wanted to twist them into something similar to chaos and then do something. Well, to provide energy for chaos and the concept body of chaos. Suifeng and the other three thought along those lines and felt that the possibility was not small. The energy rods had been used as the energy source for the Death Shroud for a dozen eras, and there was no guarantee that other energy-related items would have been taken away for something else. They did not know how many things were hidden in the soul-subduing ring, and naturally did not know how many things had been lost. Only Her Eminence knew that. The group went around the ring belt and came to the center of the empty frame. Yun Nuoxing carefully took out the energy source from the pendant and gestured forward. Then, he was stunned. It's not big enough. Suifeng smiled bitterly. It's definitely not measured by size. Before he could say anything, little Brother Maple had already taken out a transparent ball of light and stuffed the energy source into it. Then, he used order, energy, and laws to adjust it. Halfway through, he heard little Brother Maple's words and was startled. What did you say? Theoretically, the core should just be hung on it. What are you doing? Yun Nuoxing scratched his head. It's not big enough, so I'm making it bigger and strengthening it. Look, it's big enough now. The energy source was embedded in the transparent ball of light. From the outside, it looked big enough, but they didn't understand what this transparent ball of light was for. Well, I've mentioned it before. This is the energy source world. It's used to strengthen the energy source. It's stuffed with concept-grade law fragments and pure energy output energy cores, a modified version of the new energy core. This thing is directly connected to the void and nothingness, and can generate energy on its own. The speed at which it condenses energy is 1,000 times faster than the energy source. Well, it should be said that it strengthens the energy source by 1,000 times, increasing its speed by 1,000 times. That's right. Yun Nuoshing showed a pained expression as he patted the transparent sphere. This thing's cost is too high. It can't be mass-produced. Oh, we understand. It must be more costly energy cores and concept-grade law fragments. I understand. The four nodded to show their understanding. Hearing that, Yun Nuoshing shook his head and sighed, startling them. He pointed at himself and sighed. This thing costs me a little. The four of them were speechless. There was no need to explain. This was a special product that cost him his life. The things in the creation sanctum probably could not replicate it. The second generation's replicable energy source world is on the list for now, but I don't have a good idea at the moment. I have to think about it. For the first generation's one, it takes 1/10 of my life to make one, and I'll have to be bedridden for 180 days if I make 10 of them. Even if I make one at a time, my condition will deteriorate greatly after a period of rest, so it's not worth it. Yun Nuoshing sighed with a look of despair. Everyone was speechless. This thing was good, but it was costly and could not be mass-produced. Chapter 1954. The core returned to its position, and the surging energy was released continuously. The entire core was surging with surging energy. The fortress of origin shone brightly, looking even more majestic under the endless light of the origin energy. Its posture full of power seemed to be telling everyone that it could not wait to rush into the underworld and start a massacre. None of the above scenes happened. Even if an energy source world that could strengthen the energy source by 1,000 times was installed, it was still as motionless as a stone, absorbing energy desperately in the deep void and the void. After all, this guy was really crazy from hunger. A mere energy source could not fill the gap that was like a crack in the great origin realm. It might take a while for it to truly recover and walk a few steps every now and then. Let it stay for 70 to 80 days, and it will probably return to normal. Suifeng snapped his fingers and threw out the final answer. Thank God you didn't say 7 to 8 million years, just because your mouth trembled. Yun Nuoshing wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and let out a sigh of relief. 70 to 80 days is not unacceptable. Suifeng scratched his head with a dry smile. In fact, there is a faster way. Cough cough. You will understand once you hear me out. Like I said before, the fortress of origin is put together by many halls. They each have their own energy cores. Now that the main core between the cores has been dismantled, the other cores in other places are probably not safe either. So, Suifeng paused halfway and threw a tentative look at Suifeng. Suifeng shuddered and said, "You're not going to ask me to prepare dozens of energy source worlds and hang them up, are you?" Well, theoretically, yes. That will also speed up its recovery. Maybe it can shorten the time by 20 to 30 times, or something. Suifeng covered his head with his hands. Well, don't hit me if I say something wrong. Yun Nuoshing looked at the guy who was squatting down with his hands on his head with a weird expression and scratched his cheek. I only made 5 of this thing for fun. I never thought of mass-producing it. Isn't that killing me? Can't we just use an ordinary energy source? Yes, of course. The current energy source is completely devoid of concept-level power and has even been partially castrated, but little brother Feng, you've made some adjustments and strengthened it, so it should be enough under normal circumstances. Although it's still a little lacking compared to the original energy core of the Fortress of Origin. TSK, as expected, the energy source world is still a little better since it's closer to the original energy core. TSK, now's the recovery phase, so who cares if it's up to standard or not, just attach a core that can replenish energy and let it recover. Although the energy source world is a little better, there's no need to replace it. When I want to die one day, I'll ugh. Before he could finish his sentence, his mouth was covered by 4 soft hands and a pair of wings. A soft voice sounded in his left and right ears at the same time. Don't say such things. The little angel even bit him on the neck, causing him to shudder and be unable to speak. He had only said those words subconsciously. Seriously, he didn't really mean to hover between life and death. He didn't like hovering between life and death for no reason, really. But before the second generation's energy source world was created, if necessary, he wanted to get some of the first generation's energy source as well. No. The little angel bit his ear and refused clearly. Yun Nuoxing shuddered as she replied to Suifeng. Then let's use up the ones we have and use the normal energy sources as cores to make do with the rest. When the time comes, we'll talk about it again after the second generation energy source worlds are created. Suifeng couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. He was the one who said it was fine, and that he could make do with the recovery phase. Although it seemed like he said something unnecessary, it was great that Brother Feng's life-risking plan was reprimanded. He should be more careful in the future and not make him think too much. Oh, wait a minute. Yun Nuoxing suddenly raised her hand with a blank face. The energy sources are gone too. There are only 2 left. Everyone. That seemed to be the case. The first batch of energy sources was not large in the first place. They were used for emergencies and to save time. The effect had been achieved, but there was not enough to do anything else. As the first batch of energy sources, they were still dawdling on the road. It would take a few hundred years for them to be able to produce them. Anyway, 70 or 80 days is not a big problem. Just install the remaining energy source worlds and energy sources. It will shorten the time by a lot. If you have enough energy, it will be easier for you to analyze the Fortress of Origin, right? Yun Nuoxing took out the items one by one and handed them to them. By the way, let me know if you can dismantle them. No, this thing can't be dismantled. Suifeng and the others smiled bitterly. Well, he was just joking. He actually had a rough idea of the Fortress of Origin's toughness. He walked over and checked the quality of the wall. It was quite sturdy and probably would not collapse that easily. If it did, he could just let the concept space repair it again. Because it was very simple, that was not the point. The point was that even if it collapsed, he might not be able to get any useful information from the core structure of the Fortress of Origin. He could not figure out the core structure of the Fortress of Origin even in the first or second generation of the creation core. He would have to wait for the next life. But from the next life onwards, the strength of the Void's rules would drop like a cliff. The entire order would be locked at the level of celestial gods, and he would not be able to figure out whether it was order or not. Things related to the origin would probably only be recorded in some folk stories and picture books, not to mention these relics of origin that actually existed. After the battle at the end of the Dark Age, everything would probably be used up. Well, there's no other way. He would have to wait until fate brought him to it. Inside the Fortress of Origins, Joshua installed the energy source world and energy source in the core of each hall and took a stroll around, but he did not sense anything out of the ordinary. The Fortress of Origins seemed to be barely listening to him, but most of the time, it was in a state of indifference. Apart from pounding on the walls and the floor to make it obediently move the claws of pi energy to the void, it did not respond to anything else. Perhaps it was because it was not alert enough due to the depletion of energy. The energy source world and energy source could only replace 7 of the core positions. As for the remaining 20 or so halls, he could only use the new cores of the energy towers to temporarily replace them. If one was not enough, he would put a few together to make do. After all, the core positions were big enough. After he was done with all that, he did not trigger any special events in the Fortress of Origin. There was no need for him to stay here. Leaving the rest to Sui Feng and the others, he left the Fortress of Origin with the little angel and Yuan Kong. Big idiot, what are you going to do next? In the observer space, Yuan Kong looked at the big idiot who was deep in thought with his arms crossed. She could not help but walk up to him and poke his face. She and her sister had been watching him ponder for an hour. Next, I'm going to. Yun Nuoxing turned to look at her, and took out the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin that were still in disassembled state. The first level of the energy towers should be completed. Now that I have a good inspiration, I think I should be able to produce results that exceed my own expectations. Looking at the core of the Staff of Creation that resembled an octopus, Yun Nuoxing walked up to it and stroked the huge cluster of light, her gaze becoming profound. This will be a masterpiece that I have and control over at this moment. Masterpiece refers to a product's masterpiece. Just the sound of it sounded a few levels lower. Well, for someone like him who was forced to do things halfway and was forced to do so, it should be fine. Even if it was not, there was nothing he could do since he could not create things like the Staff of Origin or the Staff of Creation. The level of difficulty was too great, and he would probably have to use concept-level power to make it. As for the more advanced creations of order, the first level of the energy towers should be the limit. If he wanted to create energy towers that were not mass-produced, those special energy towers would have to go through some time of constant adjustment. There was no rush right now. Seeing that the big idiot was distracted again, Yuan Kong patted him on the arm and said, "Then you do your work. My sister and I will study the changes after the Origin baptism. Call us if you need anything." The little angel gently pinched his face and got down from him. "Don't push yourself too hard," she said softly. "Oh, got it." Yun Nuoxing nodded and suddenly smiled at the two of them. "If I go silly, remember to call me for a while. If I don't respond, then use the physical method to wake me up." The little angel and Yuan Kong were speechless. Did he mean to wake him up directly? It seemed that he knew that he could easily lose control. But I don't think I will lose control in the short term. Yun Nuoxing poked his temple with a sad expression. Hui has gone to awaken. I also have to take a look at the void front line. I don't know what happened in the past 20 years, so I have to make up for it. I have to deal with this matter and the energy tower at the same time. I won't be too involved and make myself silly. Yes, it was not rare to fall into a deep sleep because of something. Everyone in the void front line had died and come back to life about 100 times. The troublesome thing was not the matter itself, but accidentally falling asleep and waking up to find that time had flown by. It could be as short as a dozen days or as long as 100 billion years. It was not surprising that anything happened during that time. That was the most troublesome thing. They had to make up for all the things that they missed during the time they died. The Order warriors had to update their equipment when they needed to. As for the decision-makers, they had to figure out what had happened during this period of time, or find out if there were any follow-up matters that needed to be followed up and dealt with immediately. Before he lay down, the most important thing was the source law. He had also asked Hui to help collect the feedback and thoughts on the use of the product. It had been 20 years, and the collection should have been completed. It did not matter if Hui was not there, but little Qing was definitely there. The situation with the source law. I Ching returned to the void front line after completing the Origin baptism to continue his work. Hui, Yuanji, and Qing Jun all ran off to inherit the legacy, leaving him alone to manage things. In fact, a lot of the higher-ups were busy. It was actually a certain young man who was too diligent. Everything big and small would fall into his hand. He reckoned that no one knew more about the void front line than this young man, so he had to be looked for. More importantly, he could not name the others. According to Lord Maple's arrangement, the frontline world and every node have been replaced with a domain with the source law. The original domain is placed in the order domain separated from the node, and only the effect of suppressing the power of chaos is left. Did Hui and Suifeng adjust and remove part of the original domain effect? That's right. I Ching nodded slightly at Lord Maple's soul image, and continued his report. Thanks to the source law, the frontline world now needs less time to cultivate a primeval from scratch. It only needs a little more than 2 eras, almost 3. And because all the methods to ascend to primeval from the previous era have been retrieved, there are now very few who are stuck at the threshold. 3 eras. It's too late to create a new batch. We can only pray that more people can ascend to primeval in the remaining time. Well, since the threshold is no longer a threshold, the number of primeval should not be a problem. There is still more than an era, and it should be enough for 80% of the Order warriors to ascend to primeval. As for the rest, Yun Nuoshing was silent for a moment, her fiddling with the light in front of her eyes paused. There is only the problem of high-tier primeval left. I Ching laughed softly. Lord Maple, don't worry. Before the time is up, we will definitely have a group of high-tier primeval. If possible, there will be enough time for us to go a little further on the path of high-tier primeval. If that's the case, I can be at ease. Yun Nuoshing let out a long sigh of relief. He had no way of personally experiencing the power of the source law, so he was not very sure if it could achieve the desired effect. Now that he heard I Ching say these words in such a confident tone, he was a little relieved. I feel a little more at ease. Relax. F***CK. Looking at everyone going from origin to primeval, from low-tier primeval to high-tier primeval, he was the only one who could not ascend to primeval. It was so King heart-wrenching. He had worked so hard and risked his life for so long. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Negative emotions erupted again. Thinking about it carefully, there would still be 20% of the Order warriors remaining at Origin Realm to accompany him. That would be whatever. Stop comforting yourself. It's fine if you don't have this kind of company. If possible, it would be better if all of them were at primeval. Although it would be very awkward if he was the only one at Origin Realm on the front lines, everything the front lines did was to crush the underworld. It did not matter if it was awkward or not. Seeing Lord Maple suddenly put on a show, I Ching was stunned for a while. He ignored Lord Maple's conflicted expression as usual and continued to report other matters. After the Origin baptism, the Order warriors can directly touch the Origin energy after familiarizing themselves with it. As they become more familiar with it, the degree of contact they can make will increase as well. They can also use the Origin energy to faintly attack and defend, whether it be at Origin Realm or Primeval Realm. As a result, if Lord Maple has any plans that require the use of the Origin energy and the laws of Origin, please don't mind us. Just do it. Leave the rest to us. TSK, they can already adapt to the Origin energy? Yun Nuoshing replied with a tuft of her hair. There were indeed a lot of things that needed to be adjusted after the changes brought about by the laws of Origin. The energy towers and the domain of order were clearly of the utmost importance. The latter also needed to be modified due to the reappearance of the Fort of Origin. That could wait until Suifeng and the others understood the situation with the Fort of Origin. As for Yun Nuoshing, he just needed to focus on the energy towers. The first grade of the energy towers went without saying. They definitely needed to be upgraded to the limit. The second and third grade of the energy towers also needed to be upgraded due to the appearance of the laws of Origin and the fact that everyone could use the Origin energy. There was already space for upgrading, so it was not as troublesome as imagined. After dealing with it, All he had to do was use the Origin Divine Hall to replace the energy towers on the front line. As for upgrading, I Ching suddenly shuddered. His entire body stiffened when he saw Lord Feng covering half of his face with his right hand and showing a slightly deranged and twisted expression. He could not help gulping as he heard Lord Feng suddenly say, "Then I won't hold back. You all must properly grasp that portion of the origin energy." Ha 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 ha. I Ching's jaw dropped and his face paled. It's over. He felt like he had accidentally said something. It's over. Looking at Lord Feng's deranged expression, he had released the monster that had been locked in a cage. It's over. He remembered Lord Hui saying that everything Lord Feng said about maximizing his attack power was absolutely true. In other words, his words were equivalent to Lord Feng saying restriction lifted, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. Now, ha 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 ha. You go do what you need to do. I have some good ideas. Ha 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 ha. By the way, the first grade of the energy towers should be completed soon. You can look forward to it. Ha 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 ha. I Ching. It's over, this is madness, it's over. This time all the Order warriors in the Void frontline are going crazy. He had to be prepared to inform everyone and let them be prepared. After ending his conversation with Lord Feng, I Ching, with a suicidal mindset, called out to all the higher-ups of the node, everyone, we have 2 pieces of good news and 1 piece of bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" "Oh, Your Excellency I Ching, your heavy tone right from the start makes my little heart a little uncomfortable. Then, please tell us the good news first so that we can prepare ourselves mentally." "The good news is that Lord Maple will soon find the level 1 energy pagoda. The Void frontline strength will increase again." Everyone, oh. What's the other good news? Another piece of good news is that Lord Maple has a plan to further adjust the energy tower. It will probably be completed in the near future. Oh, wait. Some of the more perceptive ones were enlightened and noticed that something was not right. "Then, Your Excellency I Ching, what is the bad news?" I Ching turned away, unable to look directly at the faces of the many soul reflections that changed from excitement to calmness and then to somberness. After some thought, he covered his face. "I accidentally pulled out Lord Maple's restriction cork, and the old man was very excited when he heard it, so excited that he decided not to be human. Yes, everything related to the energy tower has to be filled. Whether it will be filled to the brim is still unknown, but there will definitely be origin energy mixed in, and the level 1 energy pagoda might even involve the power of the source of origin." Everyone's expression changed. "Wait a minute, those 3 pieces of news were stuffed together, weren't they?" I Ching's face stiffened as he continued. "I'm just telling all of you so that you can prepare to strengthen the Origin brand in a short period of time. I'm guessing that Lord Maple would definitely drag a bunch of people over to test it after he's done, which is why I'm telling all of you to prepare yourselves in advance, and by that, I mean mentally prepare yourselves. That's all, everyone, do your best." Everyone's face went pale. Good Lord. That was good news in essence, but for them now, Your Excellency I Ching, you bastard. Don't fan the flames at the wrong time. Everyone cursed. Was Lord Maple someone to be provoked so casually? Something big would happen if you did. Look, it's already happening. Oh no, they would probably have to focus on the Origin brand for a while. Not only would they have to deal with Ascension breaking through, and dealing with the Origin brand. Oh, it's really a headache. Fortunately, they were quite familiar with the Origin brand over the past 20 years and had dealt with it to a certain extent. Now, all they had to do was continue strengthening it and not expend much effort. Still, they had no idea how much Lord Maple would strengthen the Origin brand to the brim this time. In short, they had to strengthen themselves to the point where they could touch and use part of the Origin energy at will. Time was a joke. It seemed that the words he had heard since he was young, Although he had been wandering around the world since he was young, and it was the same in every life, the more he wandered, the more he heard, were more or less saying, time had the nature of a thief. If it was worse, it could be said that it was a robber. Well, when it made a move, the result was the same. It was either robbing people or robbing things. But he felt that its nature could be worse. This thing was like a pipe, piercing into his stomach and constantly stuffing him with food called anxiety, uneasiness, and irritability. When the time was right, it would take a soldering iron and drive him to the shelf. It's right to drive a duck onto a perch. Anyway, he's being driven by time anyway. But what's stuffing him with food? Stuffing him full and then dragging him out to be slaughtered? Do you want to eat foie gras? Hui sat cross-legged on the ground made of energy crystals with his arms crossed. This is a bit difficult. Do we have anyone here who knows how to cook? It's okay to burn it into charcoal, but forget about cooking it. When I was wandering outside alone, I ate charcoal for hundreds of years. Qing Jun grinned. It was really a tragic time. Xing Lu scratched his head. I'm okay. After all, I was wandering alone in the wild. Before I reached the state where I didn't need to eat or drink, I had honed my cooking skills in order to not die from eating. But we don't have these things here. Yuan Kong snorted and waved his hand. Just use the power of energy and the power of the rules to make one. Anyway, the texture and taste are about the same. We're all a bunch of guys who distort the rules to create things out of thin air. Who cares about the materials? Shuang, who was listening at the side, tilted her head. Her ability to catch up with the topic was half a beat slower. Can emotions be eaten? Hui, oh yes. Don't people who are too irritable and angry often say, I'm full of anger? Everyone. This serious explanation would lead the little girl's thoughts astray. Shuang made an O sound and turned to look at Little Star, who was surging with energy and had a head full of gorgeous long hair. Seeing his anxious and sweaty face, she turned to look at Cu and the others. Little Star, is it delicious? Cu thought about it seriously. If you like to eat salty food, you have to sprinkle more salt. Otherwise, it can only be regarded as a dessert. Everyone, Shuang understood. She stood up and ran to Little Star. She pulled him and said, Little Star, let me have a bite. Everyone, Yun Nuoxing. At this moment, he was really at the stage where his brain was spasming. He overused his brain and had a stomach full of anxiety, so he seriously thought about this problem. He even rolled up his sleeves to show Shuang his fat, snow white and slender arm. Looking at the patterns on his arm, he suddenly remembered what Yuan said. Look at this. It looks like a strange thing that has expired and is contaminated by some unknown substance. Can you eat it? Everyone looked at it and was a little dumbfounded. It was a bit hard to eat it. There were too many origin patterns, and it looked very scary. It was not strange that something would come out of it if he bit it. Shuang looked at it carefully. While he was in a daze, she picked up his hand and gently opened her mouth to take a bite. Everyone. This girl was not picky. He freed his hand and flicked his finger on Shuang's forehead. When the girl let go of his mouth, Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes and said, Don't mess around. He sighed and placed an energy tower that looked like a scepter in front of him horizontally, aiming at the space in front of him. The energy began to gather quickly, and in just 3 seconds, it was ready to attack. The mighty energy torrent that burst out made the whole space a little quieter, and the dazzling white light dyed the whole starry sky in the observer space into a grayish white. Everyone looked at the exciting scene and quieted down a little, and they all said, The light pollution of this thing is too serious. After Lord Feng tried it a few times, Qing Jun was a little restless. His saliva was about to fall out. Good stuff, it's better than the last one. The basic attack of the first level energy tower is already so, no. It's not very good. Yun Nuoxing's face was dark. He waved his hand and smashed the scepter-like tower into pieces on the spot. His face was full of distress as he smashed his head on the octopus-like light ball next to him. No, 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 it's really not good. It's really not good. It's really not good. Everyone. He was irritable. The degree of irritation increased by 1. In the past 2 days, they had seen him become more and more irritable and tired. Full of energy was written all over his face. It took a total of 12 days to finish the inheritance. After they were done, they came out to look for him. On the way, they heard that someone said that he was ready to find the first-level energy tower 12 days ago. But when they came here, they saw that someone had been busy for 12 days with a face full of despair. Looking at the debris, and all kinds of energy towers on the ground, they understood at once. The thing had been created. Yes, the first-level energy tower was ready, but this was not the best. Someone had not been able to fully unleash the attack, so he was in pain and anxious at the moment. No, that was not accurate. To be more precise, Maple's original plan from 12 days ago had been completed today. But after completing it, he suddenly realized that there was still room for improvement. So, he immediately came up with a new plan. So, they watched him toss and turn for the next 2 days. As for why they had to stay here for 2 days, it was because Sui Feng and the others had all gone to study the Fortress of Origin. They also said, there are no inheritors who can help guide. Although there are 2 people here, 2 more won't make a difference. You might as well go find Brother Feng. I'm sure he'll be happy to guide you. Those were the original words. This was the reason they were here, and probably one of the sources of Feng's anxiety. But they could not help it. If they did not come to him, there was really nothing they could do. Exploring the path of origin was much harder than they thought. Although they did not just sit here and wait and were also thinking of ways to study it, it was still very difficult. Chapter 1955. Becoming a legatee was something he had never thought about before. He felt that he was not fated to be a legatee. Well, perhaps because he had been thinking about it too much, it really did happen. Sui Feng's warning was something he had kept in mind, but he did not expect it to come true. Now, he was a little troubled, but it was not that hard to accept. After all, he had been thinking about it too much, to the point that he even had the thought of, see, I told you it would be like this. It felt like he had been freed from his burden. Even though it was a good thing to be able to increase his combat power, it did not stop him from thinking that being an origin inheritor was the most miserable job in the Order Void. If there were still others, then it would only be a higher-ranking executor. In short, there was no end to life when the word origin was involved. The degree of misery would only increase day by day, and would never decrease. If chaos was added into the equation, then it would truly be a joyous occasion. Every day, he would be tortured to death by the 2 most dangerous groups of people in the void. Maple would know the details. That guy had been tormented to the point that he was about to die from happiness. He was so happy that he wanted to level the void. Forget it. Since it was a fact, it was useless to complain. He had to take some measures now. He had to familiarize himself with this thing so that it could be put to good use. He saw that Feng had been tormented to death by him. Although there was no difference between running over to talk to him and walking into a landmine, he was really going to walk into this landmine today. The moment the thought of dying heroically came to him, he had already stood up. Everyone was shocked and watching as a warrior went into battle. He walked towards Maple and slapped him on the shoulder. With a face full of sweat, he said calmly, Maple, why don't you change your mood? Why don't you fix us first? Although I know it's troublesome, we also... Oh, that's a good idea. Let me take a break here. When Yun Nuoshing heard that, he immediately threw the level 1 energy pagoda to the ground and clapped his hands as he turned around and walked towards the group. Everyone was speechless. His heart was as unpredictable as nothingness and origins. No one knew why, even though they were of the same nature. Sometimes they would have the opposite effect, and sometimes they would have the same effect. They racked their brains for a while and finally came up with an answer: it depends on the mood. But speaking of guidance, at the very beginning, I might only be able to guide you in the simplest way. It's purely about the origin energy, origin laws, and your own matters. That's the most basic part. As for the special characteristics of your respective inherited powers, as well as the special parts, well, you might have to explore this on your own. As Yun Nuoshing said this, he walked in front of everyone. After looking around for a while, his gaze landed on Siyu. He said softly, "You seem to have inherited the power of the origin heavenly god." Siyu tilted her head and acted cute. "Who is it? Didn't I tell you when I received the inheritance?" No, it only talked about the characteristics of the energy and even more characteristics. It didn't specifically mention which heavenly god of origin it originated from. Yun Nuoshing's pretty face instantly scrunched up like a walnut. She looked around and saw that everyone was nodding in agreement. Her pretty face scrunched up even more. Alright, probably because it's an emergency inheritance ceremony, and it's not taught by the origin heavenly god in person. There are some things that weren't told to you. See you inherited the power of the origin heavenly god whose name is creation. He's the top leader of the land of origin. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Qing Jun smashed his fist on the ground and was very excited. Is he powerful? Is he very powerful? He must be very powerful, right? The top leader must be very good at fighting, right? Sister Siyu, fight with me another day. Yun Nuoshing's face twitched and she interrupted Qing Jun, because the remaining 146 heavenly gods of origin didn't want to be in charge. They forced him to be in charge. In fact, it's the other two who are in charge. So although he's the top leader on the surface, he's actually a stinky little brother. Everyone. They didn't know why, but after hearing this, they felt a little disillusioned. By the way, Stinky Little Brother is a title given to him by the second-in-command. The second-in-command is the one who takes charge of combat power. Yun Nuoshing raised her hand and pointed at herself, then pointed above her head. Everyone immediately understood. It was the heavenly destruction god who said that. Seeing this, Qing Jun awkwardly sat down, looking very obedient and not causing trouble. It was impossible to tell that he was so excited to challenge someone just now. Everyone felt that he was already scared of being beaten up by a certain observer, so they didn't continue to mention this matter at all. That creation god is the pioneer and practitioner of the path of order creation among the myriad paths of order. As I said before, the power of creation that comes with Siyu's physique should be quite compatible with this heavenly god of origin, so it's not particularly strange that she inherited his power. It's not hard to imagine. Yun Nuoshing crossed his arms and continued to look at Siyu with his head tilted. The slightly frown on his face and the accelerated thinking on his face told everyone that he was having a headache. But if that's the case, you may have to completely explore your own path, I mean the path of special characteristics. What characteristics does this inherited power of origin have, what it can be used for, what it can be changed, how it can be changed, and the special effects it has on you may have to completely rely on yourself to discover. Hearing this, Siyu's little face fell. Why? Little star, can't you help me? Yun Nuoshing scratched his head and sighed deeply. I want to, but among my 196 types of origin energy, I don't know why, but the origin energy of creation has no reaction. It's ridiculously quiet. It's probably a little weaker than the origin energy in your bodies right now. Isn't that too tragic? Hui smiled bitterly and scratched his head. Only this power is missing. Is it because the old man has a problem with you? Yun Nuoshing crossed his arms and pondered. I heard them say that the first in command is always afraid of the second in command, and because her energy is the most active one among my 196 types of origin energy, the origin energy of creation is so afraid that it trembles and doesn't dare to move. Everyone. All right, this is obviously a joke. The real reason should be related to other aspects. For example, the inheritance that you received originated from the 30th. I don't know the exact 30th era, but it was definitely a backup inheritance that was prepared before the 35th era. As for me, I actually didn't receive any proper inheritance. They squeezed their way in and left a mark on me. They didn't give me any guidance, not even the origin laws. They didn't even give me a clue about the changes in the origin structure and soul origin. I dealt with everything myself. If I don't deal with it quickly, I'll die. I don't even know how I've come this far. I don't know how long I've been alive. Yun Nuoshing's face was full of pity. You can even treat me as someone who became an inheritor halfway through my life. But if I didn't become an inheritor, I wouldn't have become an inheritor halfway through my life. I would probably still be rolling around in the reincarnation road without a stable place. Everyone. Isn't this too tragic? So, it's either because it's not an official inheritance, or because the inheritance is in this era, the 51st era. So, there should be something different in nature. Well, let's not talk about this first. I'll find out when I talk to them. Yun Nuoshing leaned against the air and said softly, in order to save time, I'll just point out the path directly. Anyway, it's just a basic path and won't cause you to deviate from the path because of excessive guidance. First, you have to familiarize yourself with the origin energy and origin rules. Then, you have to deal with the origin energy and origin rules after that. Then, you have to deal with it in this order. The progress of these 3 stages can't be too far apart. Take it one stage at a time. Don't take too big a step at the beginning, otherwise. Will it affect the balls? Yun Nuoshing rolled her eyes at him and pointed at herself. It will enter hell mode. Everyone. Then, forget it. Take it one step at a time. Well, this can't be done blindly. After all, if they want to die, he wants to die. Since you're all only one step away from high-level premier, your origin. Ji Shiyan raised her hand and said, I'm not. I just entered the premier realm not long ago. Apart from Shui Yan, the rest of you should be able to convert about 50% of your energy at your current level. The rest will have to enter the high-level Yuanshi realm. Also, because this is a new type of energy, it's different from all the energy you've come into contact with before. Your understanding and methods of handling energy in the past shouldn't be of much use. Treat it as a new type of energy. Be careful when you come into contact with it. Don't be impatient. Don't be in a hurry for quick result. Because it will enter hell mode. I understand. Hui crossed his arms and nodded. Yun Nuoshing shook her head. No, it will be 100 times more difficult. Don't ask me how I know. I have 196 types of origin energy, which is equivalent to 196 paths. I've tried 70 to 80 paths. I've only found 3 or 4 paths that are easier to use now. I still have to choose according to the characteristics of the origin energy. Everyone. They really wanted to know how he had walked so far. That's about it for now. The direction of this basic path is very clear. It should be enough for you to walk for a while. Yun Nuoshing stretched and yawned. If you encounter any obstacles along the way, come and find me. I'll go and familiarize myself with the origin energy that each of you have mastered. I'll give you some suggestions then. Feng Qinghuang hurriedly said, Won't it be too troublesome? You're deliberately making time. It's not troublesome. And it's something that I need to do. Yun Nuoshing shook her head and said, Originally, exploring the origin energy was one of my things. After all, I have to make the best use of everything. Even the sins of the world have to pay rent to stay here, let alone the origin energy. But as you all know, there are 147 paths. Each path is the main path, and the remaining 49 paths are side paths. Walking too many paths will give me a headache. In order to avoid having to master all of them at once, I've only focused on increasing the degree of their origin energy. I've only focused on dealing with a portion of the commonly used origin energy. I've put the rest aside and haven't studied them in detail. We heard this and suddenly had an idea. How's your origin energy now? Yun Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. Don't use me as a model. I'm just curious. Okay, 80%. Pfft. Everyone could not understand what was going on, but seeing Hui Du's shocked expression, they thought that it must be very ridiculous. Huey's face twitched, his face full of shock. Wasn't it 60% card state before? How come? At the mention of this, Yun Nuoxing's face became gloomy and gloomy. I've been strung up and moved around. I've been treated like a garbage station, and stuff was stuffed into my soul. I've also been tortured by all kinds of indescribable things. I've come into contact with too many origin fragments. The most direct change is the change in the origin energy. Every time I forcefully break through the limit, it's when I'm the most convulsed. Everyone. So how did you get so far? Although this is part of the reason, the origin fragments and whatnot, if I didn't deal with it subjectively, it wouldn't have caused such a drastic change. So, this is the result of my own search. After all, at this time, it's time to raise the most important power to the limit. It's time to break free from the shackles and raise the power without any scruples. At this time, I'm at my limit. Except for the origin energy of creation, I can forcibly raise the other origin energies to 90%. This is the limit that this part of the origin can bestow. As long as you have the conditions, you won't have this limit. For example, if you reach the peak of the premier, you can continue to move forward. I'm different, I'm stuck at this point. This is the disadvantage of the inheritance. Oh right, the destruction energy is an exception. After all, the primordial origin has followed me out. When the other origin energies are raised to the limit, the destruction energy should be able to pull me to the same level as her. So, in the end, I'm still her, that's what it means. Hui directly ignored his arrogant words and continued to put on a shocked expression. Have you become so inhumane? It's just that our energy levels are on the same level. When our energy levels reach the same level as hers, it means that we are holding the same weapon, and I can only wave it clumsily and stiffly, while she can precisely cut the great origin sector into slices of exactly the same thickness. I did it with all my strength and performed everything that I had to reach such a level. She, on the other hand, is just in a normal, peaceful state. You should understand it now that I've explained it to you. Yun Nuoxing shrugged. And after all, it's a power that's pulled to the limit. It can only be used once in a lifetime. Everyone! Here it comes. They would not doubt the power of this thing when it was used. They only cared about whether there was anything left after he used this level of power. After all, when the time comes to use the Staff of Origin and the Staff of Creation, it will not do if it's not at this level. Don't worry, I will use this part of power at the most critical moment. By the way, it's also a reminder so that you don't have to worry. After all, I may be forced to leave the field after I use this part of power. By then, it will depend on you and Suifeng to control the field. Okay, the declaration was over. This was a declaration that there was nothing left. It was in line with the idea of berserk, retreat, instant knockout. There was indeed no need to worry. By then, he would become a ball. There was no need to worry. Yun Nuoxing saw the complicated expression on everyone's face. He shrugged and smiled. I hope that when I wake up after I use this part of power, I can see ahem, let's not talk about that. He laughed dryly and reached into his chest. He took out the World Core of Order and threw it in front of him. The concept space was covered in a pale gold color. He clapped his hands and said, "All right, you guys can do it. There's still time. There's no need to rush. Everything can be done slowly." Yun Nuoxing looked at Hui and the others who were preparing. He counted the number of people and found that a few of the new generation of inheritors were missing. "Speaking of which, there are only 8 of you. Where are Dao Tian and the others?" Siyu immediately replied. "When we came out, they were still in the domain of origin. They seemed to be focused on handling the energy of origin. We did not disturb them. We just left them a message. I think they will come out after a while, maybe." Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and smiled bitterly. "Suifeng and the others are busy dealing with the fortress of origin, but that doesn't mean I have the energy to spare. Or rather, I'm very busy right now. I hope someone can come and help me," Yun Nuoxing thought as he tilted his head and smiled bitterly. "Suifeng and the others are busy dealing with the fortress of origin, but that doesn't mean I have the energy to spare. Or rather, I'm very busy right now. I hope someone can come and help me," Yun Nuoxing thought. But actually, he felt that by the time they were familiar with this new thing, he might have done most or all of it. It was very sad. Life of toil, life of toil. While he was sighing inwardly at the ball of light in front of him, he suddenly felt a figure cautiously approaching him. It was really cautiously approaching. When the figure was about 2 meters away from him, it stopped and seemed to intend to sit there. He also turned his head at this appropriate time and looked at the frightened girl. He asked, "What's wrong?" Feng Qinghuang stuck out her tongue and rubbed her hands together. She calmly sat down and smiled. "I feel that it will be easier to get close to Little Star. After becoming an inheritor, my influence should be weakened. Oh, there is another part. I heard from Suifeng and the others that the first generation of inheritors can guide the second generation of inheritors. Oh, and the origin god can continue to guide the second generation of inheritors as well. Then it's fine." As Yun Nuoxing spoke, he came to a realization and scratched his head. "Speaking of which origin energy did you inherit?" Feng Qinghuang suddenly fell silent. Yun Nuoxing sensed that the atmosphere was a little strange and turned around. She saw that the girl was a little depressed. Yun Nuoxing was startled. "Look at you. You look like something went wrong. Is it not the power you want?" The inheritance of origin energy was based on compatibility. However, compatibility was a matter of whether it was suitable or not. However, there were other ways of saying it was suitable. It was good to have the power that was suitable for oneself, but whether it was what one wanted or not was another matter. Looking at the depressed look on the girl's face, Yun Nuoxing knew that although she had obtained a suitable origin energy, the path she took was probably not the one she wanted. Feng Qinghuang puffed her cheeks. She was silent for a while before she nodded. "It is the origin energy related to blessing." In Yun Nuoxing's impression, there were more than a dozen origin energy related to blessing. However, based on the aura that was faintly discernible from the girl's body, the image of the origin energy suddenly appeared in Yun Nuoxing's mind. Cloud-like, cyan blue, profession support. Okay, there was one more profession support. At the same time, he also knew why the girl was so depressed. The 4 celestial gods each had the characteristic of blessing. He had not studied it separately. Anyway, all 4 celestial gods had the characteristic of blessing. Yun Nuoxing had heard from the girl herself in the ancient times that her blessing was stronger. Therefore, it was not surprising that she encountered this origin energy. The problem was that this girl, well, she liked to charge into the enemy's ranks, probably because of his influence, so much so that she was now a little depressed when she was given the title of support by the source energy. Although support could also help her charge into the enemy's ranks, it was certainly not as great as the source energy obtained by Qing Jun, that guy who recklessly traversed the void. After all, the ability of this girl's source energy was for a group of people. The kind of support that could cover a void area was different from a single person's improvement. Not the same, not the same. By the way, this energy was the power of that girl. Yes, it was the girl who kicked him into the lake to let him take a bath. She was also busy building the infrastructure in the broken continent of origin. In fact, she was one of the people in charge. He did not know whether she could fight or not. Anyway, when she was beaten up by him, she was busy running away or hiding behind the youth. Oh, it seemed that the latter was probably a shield? If it was a shield, would it be related to Hui? He turned his head and wanted to confirm it immediately. However, Hui had already entered a state of mind. His energy was tightly covered. He could only put this matter aside and look for him to confirm it later. He turned around and hugged her. He stroked her long hair and said, "All right, it's a new power. It's just a new form of power. It doesn't mean that you have to change it completely. You can still continue on your original path. As for the origin energy, just treat it as the icing on the cake. There's no need to be too calculative." "That's right," Feng Qinghuang mumbled. She poked his back with her hands. "I'm still not happy. Originally, I thought that if I have the help of the origin energy that is related to direct combat, I can help you deal with direct combat. When I became the inheritor, I had already thought about the future." But Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. It was really because of this. He hesitated for a while, and did not dare to confirm whether it was true or not. However, this worry was a little unnecessary. Look at what you're saying. It's as if you can't go to the battlefield without origin energy. Have you forgotten how you've come so far in your own journey of growth? Besides, even without the power of origin, you'll become a high-level premier in the future and go further. It's also an important power. Besides, you've helped me with blessings before. Now that you mention it again, I kind of miss it. At that time, I was fighting in the front while you covered me from the side and cast blessings on me." Feng Qinghuang was stunned for a moment. After a few seconds, she slowly raised her head and looked into his eyes. "Really? Of course." Yun Nuoxing smiled and added in his heart. Although he was not talking about in the past, but in the future, looking at the girl's slightly relieved expression, Yun Nuoxing suddenly said, "Could it be that because you want to play a role on the battlefield, you haven't used your part of the power related to blessing?" Previously, he had talked to Hui about the four gods. Although the power of blessed would be reduced after leaving the realm of the gods, it did not mean that it would disappear. He had not seen Feng Qinghuang use her blessed power. Well, looking at the girl's face, he understood. It seemed that she was thinking about it. Feng Qinghuang lowered her head and buried her face in his chest. She replied weakly, "Yes." "Well, you and see you, both of you threw your blessed power aside. It was only after you became the inheritors that you were forced to pick it up in a hurry. Why did you two take such a strange path?" Yun Nuoxing shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Feng Qinghuang mumbled and pinched his waist. Seeing that he was about to fly into the air, she said, "It's all because of you. Look at Master Hui. He is obviously a shield, but when you turned into chaos, he launched a charge that was not inferior to Lady Green's. It's all because of you. We saw it clearly in the image." Yun Nuoxing felt that he could not explain himself. He had indeed played a strange role as a leader. It seemed that the Order warriors of Node Zero were also more violent when they fought. Could it be that this was also? Well, it was probably also his influence. After calming the girl down, Yun Nuoxing tugged at his long hair and looked at the ball of light in front of him. His mind sank to the bottom of the sea again. When the girl mentioned the chaos last time, it reminded him of the most important problem. He had to think of a way to resist the chaos corruption of the chaos concept body. No, not against the void frontlines, but against himself. He had already experienced it once, and if it happened again in the final battle, it would all be over. He had to think of a way. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.